Hello, welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Today we'll be discussing who killed Levi Frady, the story behind that, from somebody who personally knew and was there around, per se, some of the people involved. And without further ado, I want to go ahead. Please come to YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to hit the like icon so that more people are notified. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and still go ahead and do the copyright disclaimer because if I do, I go read that on the timeline events, Charles.
The timeline.
Yeah, I got the timeline with me. So, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is the use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips a balance in favor of fair use. Thank you so much for coming in, Charles and Eric. Thanks for coming in and helping us try to get answers and exposing a lot of these horrific people, these monsters.
Well, thank you for having us. And what I'm going to say is, what we're going to do is what we have to say. The parties that we do mention are presumed not guilty until proven guilty in the court of law.
Right?
But actually, you got a double header today again with Mr. Kiss and myself. And Mr. Kiss, as you are aware, was been buddies ever since high school. And of course, he lived with my family there in 1983 for a brief period, um, around 3 months before he went into the Navy there and did his 3 year service to them.
Thanks.
To the
Can you
government.
hold up? Can you hold for a second? I want to make sure that when you click, when you're here at YouTube, StreamYard, you see over there where it says comments. So click on comments, and you'll be able to see when somebody comments. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. All
All right.
right. There we go.
Yeah. So then you'll be able to see the different people. Like Chris came in and saying hello, and Eric Skinner came in and said hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Without, do you want me to read a little bit of the timeline first, or what do we do? What do
Well,
you want me to do?
you can. We'll let you go ahead. So, ladies first.
Okay. For the first time, okay, we got to put in mind this is November the 3rd, 2004. Dawson News, the advertiser. GBI releases event timeline in the Frady case. Is it showing on my screen or am I not showing it? I don't think I'm showing it right
Yeah,
now,
you're
right?
not
Yeah, we
showing
don't
it.
see it. We don't see it.
Okay, y'all see that y'all got somebody that says, hello, Charles and Eric.
Hello.
Hello, hello. That would be Eric Skinner. Hello, Mr. Skinner.
And you're talking to Eric? Yes.
Hey, you're talking to Eric Kiss. That's correct.
Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and put it like that where it's easier for y'all to see. Because it'll be full screen then. So GBI releases a bit timeline in the Frady case. And when you see something that's a little different, speak up, okay?
Okay.
So the first time since the investigation began, law enforcement agencies investigating the death of Levi Frady are releasing a timeline detailing the 11-year-old's activities the day of his abduction and murder. It was just 7 years ago, October 22nd, 1997. So this is 2007. That seven. Sorry, that's 2000 something else. Not then. That Levi disappeared from Forsyth County. Forsyth. Is that how you pronounce it? Forsyth.
Yes, ma'am.
That's correct.
His body was found in a neighboring Dawson County the next day. He had been shot multiple in the Dawson Forest Wildlife Management Area. The sheriff's offices of Forsyth and Dawson counties, along with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, are still searching for Levi's killer or killers. The timeline developed by detectives through interviews with neighbors, family, and passing motorists traces Levi's whereabouts from the time he arrived home from school around 3:30 p.m. to the last time he was seen alive shortly before 7 p.m. on Little Mill Road. Little Mill is a well-traveled thoroughfare located between Georgia 306 and Georgia 369. By releasing the chronology in detail, detectives hope new eyewitnesses may come forward, resulting in new leads in the unsolved cold case homicide. I kind of like find a lot of that weird because a lot of the detectives in the case they'll sweep it under the rug because a lot of them are crooked. Also,
Yeah, that's true.
also that's true. Yeah. Also included with the timeline are two previously released composite sketches of potential witnesses. The first man, sketch A, was seen walking along Little Mill Road at approximately 6:30 p.m. on the day of Levi's disappearance. The second man, sketch B, was seen at the Dawson County Wildlife Management Area the day Levi's body was found. More information on the sketches and on Levi's case can be found at www.ganet.org/gbs/homicides/Frady.html. Anyone with information on the murder of Levi Frady or the identities of the men in the sketches are asked to please contact investigators at 888-233-5680 toll free. Again, that is 888-233-5680. October 22nd, 1997, 3:30 p.m. to 4:12 p.m. Levi Frady departs from school and arrives home after getting off the school bus. Note Levi's sister remains at school awaiting her mother. Awaiting her. Sorry, got to scroll back up. Awaiting her mother's to pick her up at approximately 5:30 p.m. At 4:12 p.m., Levi calls his mother at her workplace in Alpharetta and tells her he's going over to visit a friend and also going by another friend's residence. His mother tells Levi to be home by 6:30 p.m. At 5:12 p.m. through 5 p.m., okay, 5:12 to 5 p.m., excuse me, a couple walking on Little Mill Road sees Levi riding his bicycle past their driveway, heading in the direction of another couple's residence on Little Mill Road. They observe that Levi has his book bag strapped on his back. At 4:15 to 4:30 p.m., another neighborhood resident sees Levi riding his bicycle traveling down Picklesimer. How do you pronounce that? Picklesimer Road.
Yeah, Picklesimer.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. At 4:30 to 5 p.m., another neighborhood resident sees Levi riding his bike in the direction of Levi's friend's house. At 4:40 to 5:45 p.m., Levi and his friend number one, ride their bicycles over to another friend two, residence and play on the trampoline. During the visit, friend number two invites Levi to go out to eat with the family. Friend number one does not have the money to go and declines. Levi does have money with him and calls his residence to talk with his mother. She is not at home. At 4:55 p.m., his mother leaves work en route to school to pick up her daughter. And between 5:30 p.m. and 5:45 p.m., Levi's mother and sister arrive home bringing carry-out food from McDonald's restaurant, hamburgers and french fries. 5:45 p.m. through 6, friend number two and his family leave their residence en route to the restaurant to eat. Levi and friend number one leave the residence at the same time en route back to the residence of friend number one. Note, Levi leaves his book bag on the patio of the residence of friend number two. At 6:25 p.m. through 6:35 p.m., a witness was traveling down Little Mill Road in his Ford Bronco pulling a trailer. As he was approaching Frogs Creek, he met a beige Ford F-150 truck, followed by an Oldsmobile or Pontiac station wagon. Does either of those sound familiar?
No, they don't. Matter of fact, this whole timeline is way off
Yeah,
from
it's
the
just like it's
original.
not really in the order. It's like it's going jumping around really bad right here. And
It
it said,
is.
and it
The
had ladders and ladder truck. He stopped to let the truck and station wagon go by. As he continued traveling, he met two boys coming down a hill on their bicycles on the right side of the road. He then continued up the hill and saw a man walking down the hill on the left side of the road. The man had been picking up cans. Note the witness completed a composite drawing of the individual on November the 21st, 1997. The sketch was then released. See attached composite marked Exhibit A. At 6 to 6:38 p.m., Levi remains with friend number one, and at 6:38 they travel over to another residence to use a telephone. Levi's friend remains outside the residence, and Levi calls home and talks with his sister. Note: Levi's mother is in the bathtub and tells her daughter to tell Levi to come straight home. Levi says that he does not want to ride his bicycle home because it's getting dark, and Levi mentions being afraid of some dogs that he would encounter on his way home. At 6:45 to 6:50, Levi leaves the residence of friend number one on his bicycle, traveling on the direction of Little Mill Road. Levi traveled in this direction to avoid encountering the dogs on the other road, which would have been Pickle Summer Road, the direction of initially he initially came when traveling to his friend's house after 4:12 p.m. this date. At 6:15 p.m., a resident saw Levi to traveling on his bike down Little Mill Road, heading in the direction of the residence of friend number two. Note: the resident observed a small black dog following Levi. 6:52 p.m. to 7 p.m., a motorist, a stranger in the community who was lost, drives past a man described as being between 35 and 60 years of age, having grayish black or light brown hair, scraggly and unkempt. She observes that the man is wearing possibly blue jeans. Okay, that's the first one. So let me go to the second part of the timeline still, okay? Yeah, you'll be able to tell us what's amiss, you know what I'm saying? And a white or light colored shirt with the sleeves rolled up. She stops and attempts to ask a man for directions. The man does not respond to her when she says, Mister. The man walks off into the woods immediately after she speaks. The location where the man walked off into the woods is located at a residence driveway, which is within a few hundred feet from where Levi's bike was ultimately found. She did not see a bicycle lying on the road side of the road in that area during that time. At 7 p.m., Levi's mother calls Levi's friend's residence looking for her son, but gets no answer. At 7 p.m. to 7:15 p.m., Levi's mother and sister leave the residence en route to look for Levi. Note the mother's boyfriend pulls into the driveway as they are leaving. She tells her boyfriend that she is going to look for Levi because he has not come home yet. During the search, Levi's sister sees a bike that looks like the one belonging to her brother on the side of the road at a driveway. She tells her mother, but her mother does not hear her. The mother travels to Levi's friend's house and, after checking there, returns home. Levi's sister does not mention seeing the bike again, but you brought it back home, silly. At 7:34 p.m., Levi's mother and sister are back at the residence, and Levi's sister calls her friend and tells her that Levi has not come home. At 8:01 p.m., the family of Levi's friend number two purchases stems at Kmart in Cumming after the family went out to eat and writes a check verified by receipt. October 23rd, 1997, 2 a.m., Levi's mother wakes up to check on Levi. Levi is not home, and she again leaves her residence. I mean, what did you wait till 2 a.m. to, you went on to bed and all that? Really? Seriously? Into this driveway on the edge adjacent to Little Mill Road. 6 a.m. A resident leaves for work and sees Levi's bicycle in the same location as her husband did. Neither of the residents made the bicycle. At 6:45 a.m., the residents' children leave their residence and walk down to the end of the driveway to wait for the school bus. They see the bicycle at the end of the driveway adjacent to Little Mill Road and places it in the ditch alongside the driveway where it was ultimately found. 7:02 a.m. Little sister talks to her father by phone but does not tell him that Levi is missing. At 7:30 a.m., Levi's mother telephones the parents of Levi's friend and tells them she is looking for Levi. Had you not still called the police by now? What? 7:50 a.m., Levi's mother returns to Levi's friend's residence and again looks for Levi. Note, during this time, Levi's grandfather and other relatives are out. Uh, sorry, looking for Levi. They find the bicycle in the ditch located adjacent to a driveway and pick the bike up and take it over to Levi's mother's house. The family discusses the matter and decides to take the bicycle back to its location before law enforcement arrives. 8 a.m. Levi's mother files a missing person report with Forsyth County Sheriff's Office on her son Levi. Like I said, why did you not notify him missing the day before? That's of the utmost importance.
Technically, you're not supposed to be able to file a missing persons report until after 48 hours.
Or
But
back
the
then.
thing is, when it's a kid, it's totally different. You know,
Yeah.
when it's a kid, you got a right to do that. Say, hey, something happened to my kid. He's not home. Nobody knows where he's at. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, their timeline and events are way off in this article.
Okay. So then they say at 9:30, Levi's mother calls her boyfriend at his place of employment and tells him that Levi is still missing. He leaves work and comes to the search area. 10:15 a.m. Levi's mother contacts Levi's father and apprises him of the situation. 10:30 a.m. ground search in the Little Mill area begins. 2 p.m. Levi Frady's body is found in Dawson Forest Game Management Area by hunters. Crime scene reveals Levi had been shot 3 times. 10:48 p.m. A hunter from Dawson Forest is interviewed and he gives a description of a small blue truck with a white camper being seen in an area close to the crime scene at approximately 10 a.m. the same date. He also gives description of a man dressed in a dress shirt and a tire, which seemed out of place in Dawson Forest. He completed a composite, see attached composite marked Exhibit B, which of course it's not showing anywhere. Without further ado, let's get back to this.
Okay. Well, Levi went missing at 3:30 p.m. Number one on October 22nd. He was abducted off his bicycle at his mother's home by his daddy Milton Frady, Craig Manier, and Danny Hughes. Now, Craig Manier is the chairman today of the Home Depot Corporation. Danny Hughes was a manager of King's Leathercraft in Murphy, North Carolina. The man that was seen down the street from Marilyn Partman's home, that is Levi's mother, was Doug McRae of the Radio Shack in Murphy, North Carolina, by whom all were the ones responsible for the abduction of Levi. The second suspect that was released, that was seen going door to door in the neighborhood, across the street, was Jim Vickers, the Electrolux branch manager of Gainesville, Georgia.
And the reason why you know this is, can you explain to the people how you know this information?
Well, yes. Well, I'm going to say for number one, that Ron Vinson, the chief investigator for the Centennial Park attack of the Georgia Bureau investigation, is fully aware of what happened to Levi Frady. All this timeline is off. It is nothing near the actual timeline of the abduction of Levi Frady. It has changed from the original dialogue that was released in the previous newspaper article. So this is a what I call a conjured up timeline. This is totally sets off the
Cover up timeline.
the cover up timeline to pretty much conceal the parties who are actually responsible for the murder of Levi. And
Because
as
these people are big in power and everything.
that is correct. Um, we're going to go back to the Saturday evening prior to Levi's homicide, abduction and homicide, to such as Georgia, to my brother Fred Rogers' residence.
Okay.
That year, I had very little opportunity and desire to go visit with my brother Fred because of the large number of terrorist attacks that was occurring, that which of course I helped stop the majority of them of that year. If I remember correctly, it was around the I don't know, around the 19th, that Saturday night. I did go by his house there at Such's, and we had a conversation about the upcoming terrorist attack on the FBI field office down in Mobile, Alabama. They were intending to hit in the latter part of January of 1997. And Agent Vincent lived in close proximity of my older brother there in Such's, Georgia, and he worked out of the Cleveland field office. And like I said, he was the state of Georgia's lead investigator of the Centennial Park attack. So he got a little belligerent and loud and obnoxious over me relaying that information to him. One, because he was part of the terrorist organization. Two, he was also involved in the murder of Levi Frady. He was also involved in the murder of John Benet Ramsey. So I wound up having to leave his house, not on a very good note between him and me, to say the least. But he assured me that he would not let anything bad happen to me before I left.
You see, look at the screen. What I'm showing right now, right quick. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I see that, Levi and John Benet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got the birth and death dates right there.
Yeah.
Bless the Lord.
Yeah. So anyway, I believe it was a Wednesday morning, which was October the 22nd. I was at my office in Murphy, and my branch manager gave me
Is that
this.
Murphy, North Carolina, or Murphy where?
Murphy, North Carolina, yes,
Okay. So
at the
gotta
Electrolux sales
elaborate,
branch.
make sure people know what states,
Yeah. So my branch manager, when I came in that morning, Doug McRae was in there from next door at the Radio Shack.
Oh boy.
And Charlie handed me this lead to go to Cumming, supposedly for delivery of the lowest line canister vacuum cleaner that Electrolux had available at that moment, which of course that was my part-time job, was a sales rep for Electrolux. He asked me if I had any other appointments that I had set for that day, which I had, was over in Gilmer County. And he said, well, I got you a 3:30 appointment in Cumming. So call your 5:30 appointment and see if they'll cancel out or reschedule.
Cummings where the Frady boy lived, right?
Ma'am?
Frady is where the Cumming boy, that's where the Cumming boy lived, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Frady lived in Cumming, Georgia. That is Forsyth County. Which was an area I never worked when I worked out of Murphy, North Carolina, which I never really worked for Forsyth County.
And,
Um,
and you never had to answer to them before on what you did, when they did these type of things, right?
right. Um,
We've been a contractor.
yeah.
So it's kind of
Um,
weird that all of a sudden he was trying to be adamant about you being there at that one particular place for some reason.
well, when I called my customers, that was my 5:30 appointment. Um, they did not want to reschedule,
I don't blame him.
and they were very adamant about me being there. So it would be impossible for me to run my 1:30 appointment there in LJ and drive all the way over to Cumming to even see about delivering them bottom line canister machine, which of course Doug, when he was in the office that morning, goes, well, knowing the kind of salesman you are, you can go out there and sell them something nicer. They were very adamant about me going. Charlie, my branch manager, he had somewhere he had to be that day, so he couldn't run the appointment. And he threatened to fire me if I didn't go and run that appointment, whether I sold machines at both appointments that I had scheduled myself that day, which I did do. That he would still fire me, which he couldn't do because I was a subcontractor. I was not an employee for the company, so I had the
Yes, so
right
you could do
to.
your own thing.
Yeah, I had a right to reject any lead that he would provide me from the office, and not have to worry about termination.
Especially if
Yeah,
you're
because
in
he
that.
had no rights to fire you. Am
Yes,
I
yes.
right?
Yeah, so he threatened to fire me if I did not go to Cumming that day. Well,
That's very suspicious, ain't it?
what I did not know was the FBI had my office tapped. They had tapped the office in January of 1996 because of their involvement in the Oklahoma City bombing. So the FBI had my office tapped, and I did not know this. So I step outside to smoke a cigarette, drink my coffee, and kind of gather my thoughts about what I was going to do, because I just knew there was something um, to set me up some way to get me into Cumming that afternoon. And of
Right.
course, Doug's nephew, Matt McRae, he came out of the back door of the Radio Shack, and he told me that um, I better not go to my 5:30 appointment without going to Cumming that day, or they would show up at my 5:30 and kill me along with my clients at 5:30 that afternoon.
Wow.
So he went back in to the Radio Shack. So I'm really, I really kind of scattered brained at that point, trying to figure out how in the world I'm going to get out of going to Cumming that day. So I went
Because
back
you know
in.
that you knew that even if you went, they were still going to try to kill you no matter what and frame you for whatever they're about to do, right?
Yeah, they had already tried to set me up for the Centennial Park attack by postponing the attack from the 25th of July to my daughter's birthday on the 27th of July. They made that decision after my brother convinced me to go to North Carolina during my divorce in 1996 and live with my dad or live at my dad's house up in Whittier, North Carolina. Fred suggested that I could go and get me a job, just transfer my part-time job from Pensacola, Florida, over there to Murphy, North Carolina. So that's what I wound up doing. And my first day with Electrolux in Murphy was on the 23rd of July, 1996. So I knew there was nothing to this appointment, but I was trying to figure out a way to get out of it. So I decided just to go ahead and drive down to LJ anyway, and I went to the Waffle House there to have my breakfast, hoping to see a deputy sheriff or somebody in law enforcement in there that morning. And of course, no luck. I didn't see anyone that resembled anyone in law enforcement. So after I paid my bill, I went outside and I heard someone kind of lowly holler my name. And I looked around, I couldn't see where it was, and they hollered again. I looked over, and there was a distinct gentleman in a white Silverado parked in the parking lot, motioned for me to come over to his truck. So I went over, and it was Agent Steve Maxwell of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation out of the Calhoun or Dalton field office. And he had been alerted by the FBI to track me down over there in Ellijay, which he found me at the Waffle House. So he took this little device out of a briefcase he had to train the tracking device and bugs on my vehicle without draining my battery. I wish I had one of them myself, because they had tracking devices and bugs on my vehicle.
Right.
So he drained them down. So we got to talking about 8 minutes into the 10-year period it took to drain the batteries of anything that would have been in my vehicle or attached to my vehicle, like a pager or tracking device or bugs.
Right.
And he wanted to know what it was that they were planning. I said, well, it's not going to be a terrorist attack, because if it was, they would send me to a commercial business. I said, they're sending me to a residential neighborhood, which makes me believe that they're going to abduct a child over there and murder a child and try to pin it on me. So he asked me if I had appointments. And of course, I told him what times my appointments were. Told him where they were at, and he asked me if I could call that bum appointment into another branch, and I told him I could call the Gainesville office and give it to the branch manager over there, so they could send somebody out there and place them in the neighborhood instead of being in the neighborhood myself. And that's what I did. Jim Vickers, he was the branch manager of Electrolux. And you find this out when you look at the other previous news articles and the other stuff pertaining to Levi's abduction and his homicide. This article that they put out here is just way off comparison to everything else that has been released before. So they had assistance out of the Gilmer County Sheriff's Department to go out at my 5:30 and check the area to make sure that nobody would show up in that area while I did my 5:30 appointment, which of course I alerted my customers when I got there. They wanted to know why they saw the amount of unmarked law enforcement in the area. And I told them why and what it was pertaining to. And they still persisted on looking at the equipment, and which they did wind up purchasing, even though they had been informed that, their lives could be put in danger. Well, they were one of the largest families there in Gilmer County. They all lived there around their family members. And they clearly stated they did not support the people that was responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing and the Centennial Park attack, which we called the Olympic Park attack back then.
Yes, I remember the bombing that happened over there in Atlanta.
Yeah. So I go to my 1:30. I wound up selling this lady a shampoo or a polish package Wound up leaving there right around, 3 o'clock. Drove over to LJ to the Waffle King. Went in there and hung out till about just after 5, before 5:15, and drove out to my 5:30. And that's when I'm not going to say their names. Saw the law enforcement cruising by their house and area checking things out, and that's when I explained to them what it was about. So I
Right.
wound up leaving their home right around just about 8 o'clock and drove back up to the community of Culberson. They're in Cherokee County, North Carolina, and went home and called it a night and went in the next morning, and turned in my sales, restocked my equipment, and got the shampooer and shampooer I had to go and deliver to my 5:30 appointment that afternoon. And they really were upset when they found out that I did not go to Cumming. So what had happened was Jim, he had a
What
Dodge
Jim who?
Vickers, the branch
Okay.
manager of Electrolux.
Okay.
So he arrives there in the neighborhood, and he tries to find the street number of the address of this, supposed appointment. We always called them blind dates, um, because they would, be called into the office. We didn't know what we were going to find when we got there.
Right.
So that's why we would call them a blind date. Um, he goes there to find the street number of the residence. Well, the street number did not exist. If it had, it would have been kind of across the street and next door to the home that was across from Marilyn Parkman and Levi Frady's home. So he proceeded to going door to door, knocking on doors to see if he may have, maybe one of those residents had been the appointment he was supposed to go to, and nobody, the ones that did answer the door didn't know anything about it. And not everybody was at home, to my understanding. Well, he
Wow.
witnessed the abduction of Levi.
Wow. So that was a direct setup where you were supposed to be in a place where nobody was expecting anybody really to show up to sell them an Electrolux machine or whatever.
Yeah, that's why his composite sketch with a composite sketch of Doug McRae wound up in the newspapers. That was Doug McRae and Jim Vickers. And of course,
Oh,
Jim, he wound up growing a mustache, to change his appearance. And he passed away a couple of years ago selling tires over there in Gainesville. But he was really nervous that they were going to eventually wind up pinning him with a murder. And I told him, I said, no, sweat it. The GBI knows you're not a suspect in his homicide.
yeah, because he just went over there to do that job then, right?
Yeah, he was just doing his job. He didn't have a sales rep he could give the lead to go over there. So he went over there personally to run the lead, and come to find out that it was a bum lead and a setup. He
Right.
witnessed he witnessed Levi's abduction. Levi was taken off his bicycle there in the carport at his mother's home, between 3:30 and just before 3:45 p.m. that afternoon. There was
So
no Levi right.
nobody was home with him at the time. Oh, is that right? According to the
That's
newspaper?
that's correct. He did not even have time to make it to his friend's house down the street, which was this Latino boy that was, his family were Mexican. That was his best friend. And that's who he always liked to go hang out with. He didn't even have a chance to go get with his friend, to my understanding, because he was abducted there at his home, not
Wow.
some mile away, not some other road away, or anything like that. He was taken from his home. So anyway, actually, I do think that Lacey was home. Come to think about it, I'm not clear about that, but I think she was. But whenever, yeah, she was there because Milton told her that whenever her mom got home to have her to page him. So
Wow.
Lacey was at home. This is the story I got out of Marilyn Parkman back in September of 1999, whenever she and I spoke.
Yeah, so they tried to make sure that no guilt was going to be on the sister whatsoever. So put her as still being at the school.
Yeah, well, she pretty much went home. That doesn't make sense. Why would she stay at the school and Levi take the bus home and Marilyn come pick her up? Uh,
Exactly. It didn't make sense at all. That's right.
yeah. You know, both of them would have stayed at the school, or both of them were home on the school bus. So
Do you
I
think
don't even.
the parents knew anything about this going to happen to their son or whatever?
Well, I don't even think Levi went to school that day. Actually, I think he was out sick that day. That's the story that I got out of his mother in 1999, that he didn't even go to school that
We
day.
need to check back into that.
Yeah. So I don't know if Lacey went to school or not. I'm unclear to that. But from what I recollect was Lacey was at home whenever Levi was abducted and instructed by her daddy to have her mother to page him when she got home from work. Or at least that's what I was told by Marilyn Parkman. So um, when her mom got home, she and her mom wiped down the bicycle.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, she contacted Milton. Milton instructed her what to do. She wiped down the bicycle, and of course, Lacey helped
Is
her.
Bill their daddy's name? Levi Brady's daddy?
Milton, yes.
Okay.
So they wiped down his bicycle and they drove a mile away and they staged the abduction scene where he told them to stage the abduction scene at.
Wow.
Milton, Manier, Hughes, and McRae proceeded in driving him over to the McDonald's in Cumming so he could enjoy his favorite last meal, which to my understanding was a quarter pounder with cheese, fries, and a Coca-Cola. And so that was Levi's favorite last meal. As you remember, the pineapple with John Bonet was her
Right.
favorite. So that
Exactly.
was John Bonet's favorite last meal. And from what I understand it out of Marilyn Parkman and Albert Samples both, because I spoke without Albert Samples about it. But that's where Levi got to enjoy his favorite last meal. That was at the McDonald's there in Cumming. So they proceeded after they left there around 5 or 5:30 to drive over to Marshall Tallett's home. Now Marshall and his brother Jamie Talent back there, they were some pretty rough characters. Family owned a junkyard. They were into drug trafficking, and Milton and Maryland, they had acquired around a $78,000 drug debt
Oh, geez.
to the McRays and Eric Rudolph.
Uh,
Um, for both marijuana and methamphetamine. Well, Melton had a $40 million inheritance that he received 10 days after Levi's homicide. So he told Marilyn that he was going to go and talk with some friends about borrowing the money toward his inheritance, and that he could pay the drug debt to get Levi back, and that he was confident that he could get up the money to pay to get Levi back, is the reason why she went along with the plan to begin with and did not report him missing that evening. She was instructed not to report him missing until the following evening.
Wow. I guess
So,
drugs won over that. You know, you cared more about drugs than you did your own children.
well, there's a lot of people that are like that. They won't even
Yeah.
give up the drugs when they have the children, because really they don't deserve having the children. I hate, that's a sad thing to say, but that's just the way it is.
You would think that with the GBI knowing that something was going to transpire over there near that location, that they would have maybe been back up somewhere, hiding somewhere to be able to try to stop it, you know?
Yes, but what can you do? They had two Forsyth County sheriffs there, to my understanding, in the area on the lookout, but you really can't do anything when a dad of a child shows up at his mother's residence and take him. Now, I don't think they saw that, but they, to my understanding, Jim did drive by two Forsyth County deputies after he left the street that day to return back to Gainesville. So, not saying that the deputies were involved. It's just the deputies didn't notice anything suspicious.
But we know how they are over there in Cobb County anyway.
Well, yes.
Fulton
Especially
County, though. Fulton County, Cobb County, I believe, right?
Yeah, Cobb County, they're the worst.
Hall County's getting the same way.
Well, Hall County, yeah, you're right. Hall County is same way, because they had deputies that was tied in with Georgia Governor Zell Miller at that time, who Eric Rudolph, by the way, was employed by as well, part-time at the Brasstown Valley Golf Club there in Young Harris, Georgia.
A lot of people forget the Amy Hallman case. Rudy Lee Bromley was a deputy with Hall County.
Yeah.
And he was convicted for her murder.
Yeah, the
Seriously? What was, how old was she?
12.
Amy Hallman, I believe she was 12 years old.
Well, was she essayed before she was murdered, do you know?
She actually went to school with my late wife. And my late wife actually was on the jury panel in reference to that case.
But she wants to know if she was sexually assaulted.
She was.
Yeah, she was sexually assaulted.
Okay,
And hung
continue.
off the cliff up there at Raven Gap
Wow.
at Amicalola Falls.
Wow.
That's why it took so long to find her, because she was hung over the edge where nobody would think to look. But eventually somebody stumbled across her body.
So they found her body in Clayton, Georgia, and Raven County.
Oh, wow. Could you write that name down to me and send it by in Facebook so I could do a little research on that person as well?
Sure.
Yeah, I had forgotten about her case. But anyway, Levi was taken to Marshall Talent's house. And even though that Marshall Talent had a girlfriend, he was also having a fling on the side with Albert Samples, who was staying with him at his home there in Cumming. And around 6 o'clock, that's when my brother Fred, Roger Nance, Eric Rudolph, and Matt McRae arrived, according to Albert. And of course, they were there smoking marijuana, trying to get Levi to smoke marijuana. And Levi, he was, a religious boy. He attended church regularly. He played the piano and would sing at church. He was not racial prejudiced, like his daddy was a white supremacist. He had friends at school that were black, and of course, his best friend who was Hispanic. And that didn't sit too well with Milton. Milton had vowed that he would never receive one penny of his $40 million inheritance. Like I said, he received 10 days later after his son's homicide.
Wow.
According to Maryland, around September the 19th, 1997, their driver had got stopped by the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department in a routine traffic stop, who I believe was Deputy Randy Thompson at that time, who later became a fireman for the Forsyth County Fire Department and wound up one of the victims of who we know as Lynn Turner. But $3,500 worth of methamphetamine had been seized during that traffic stop and arrest, which was on consignment to Milton and Maryland from the Talent brothers, who had been provided by Matt McRae of the Radio Shack in Murphy, North Carolina. Well, even though Albert is native of Cumming, he was good friends with the Rudolph brothers. So he would be up in Murphy and Topton, North Carolina frequently. And so would Marshall Talent. Jamie Rudolph, Eric and Daniel Rudolph's one brother.
Yeah, I was about to ask you if he was related to Eric.
Yeah, Jamie Rudolph. Yeah. He was a homosexual. And Albert would go over there and hang out with them. And Jamie would give him some drugs, some pills or something that would knock him out. And Jamie would take advantage of him when he was knocked out. Now, I heard this from Albert himself. And he kept going over there anyway. When the drugs didn't even were as effective as they were in the beginning, he still knew what was going on and would allow Jamie to carry through with, sexually assaulting him, which you really can't call it a sexual assault if he's a willing participant at that point.
Right.
So there was I call it a love octagon, not triangle,
Kind of like an orgy, huh?
well, yeah, but I'd say a pyramid between Albert, Jamie, Daniel Rudolph, and Marshall Talent, which later Albert became the full-time live-in boyfriend of Marshall Talent. And I think it was 2015 or 2016, they had an argument over the weapon that was used to murder Levi with, and Albert tried to stab Marshall to death and was arrested for aggravated assault and an attempted murder. And he is still in the Georgia Department of Corrections for the attempted murder of his boyfriend.
And could I ask if Levi Frady's father, if he was friends with John Ramsey as well and the Bentleys and all that?
Well, he was real good friends with my brother Fred. Marilyn, she was real good friends with my sister-in-law Darlene. They would talk on the phone all the time. Um,
The
so they
Fred's
were,
wife, right?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Darlene Rogers, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So
So I was trying to make sure
Darlene,
because I knew you had two brothers. So,
yes, ma'am. Well, only one of them got married, and it's a miracle that he was able to find a wife that would have anything to do with him.
well, yes, she had to be bad too in it herself, to be able to put up with him.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, I think her staying with him was more out of fear for her and her children's safety more than it was a love connection. I might be
Yeah.
wrong, but
But would that not be kind of like an oxymoron to go ahead and for protection of her and the kids when he's a pedophile and all that, child murderer type of thing? You know what I'm saying?
we believe so, but some people like in her case don't think so. Um,
Wow.
because you're talking a lunatic. Um,
Yeah, I would say so.
yeah, I mean a complete lunatic. Um, well, my
Sorry about
parents,
the name Darlene because not all of us Darlenes are lunatics like that.
yeah, I mean, good grief, they murdered Jennifer Olson, this girl that had this huge crush on me and wanted to hook up with me and marry me and have my children. Just because of that, they went out there while her family was on vacation in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and murdered her because of that.
Yeah, because she
And
said she was going to be adamant that she's going to be with you, so they wanted to make sure to try to do whatever they could, even though you were dating somebody else at the time.
yeah, yeah, and they did not want me having any heirs to my dad's estate. For once they got rid of me, I wouldn't have any heirs that could come in and claim my share of my daddy's estate.
Guess what? You got one.
Yeah. Yeah, they couldn't do anything once I got down to Evergreen, Alabama, except try to kill me when I was down there, which ended up with me winding up in Murphy, North Carolina, and shutting
Uh,
down 29 of the 34 terrorist attacks.
Is Evergreen, Alabama, anywhere near Phoenix City, Alabama?
Now, Phoenix City is over there close to the Georgia border with Columbus, Georgia.
All right.
Okay, that is over in eastern Alabama. Evergreen, we call it LA, lower Alabama. It's down there
Yes.
just not far from the Florida state line. It's the neighboring county of Covington and Escambia County, Alabama.
Right.
And of course, Escambia County, Alabama borders Escambia County, Florida, which the county seat is Pensacola. Atmore is the county seat of, well, not Atmore, but Bruton is the county seat of Escambia County, Alabama. And Andalusia is the county seat of Covington County, Alabama.
Okay. All I'm familiar with is, going on down 31 and 65 when you got to go to Monkey Monkey Town, we call it Montgomery,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going around to trying to think of what that Dothan, Alabama, later on down before you get to the Florida line.
Yeah, yeah. Leslie Lanier, her husband used to be the district attorney for Covington County. She was a sales rep for the Letchelux branch of Dothan. And
Oh wow!
sometimes she and I would go out and work together there in Covington County, Alabama, selling machines because she was a part-time rep as well. Real nice couple. Um,
So
But
what else do you think is wrong with that timeline on this Levi Frady case?
well, everything. There's nothing really that correct about what that article just read out comparison to the real narrative of the Levi Frady case.
So it was actually Milton himself that picked up his son from the home, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then went and basically got him his last meal at McDonald's, right?
Yes, ma'am. And see, like with the John Benet Ramsey case, it's the same with the Levi Frady murder case. Both sets of parents were involved in the homicides of their children.
Right. And we got this discussed on so many other videos I did here at YouTube. He discussed it, and knowing Beth Ramsey, and he was right there when John Ramsey threatened Beth Ramsey about gonna kill John Bonet on the anniversary of this other girl's death, who he had killed up in, what was that at? Oklahoma.
That was up in Birmingham, Michigan, and Oakland County in the
Yeah,
Oakland
Oakland
County
County. There we go.
Calvert.
Yeah. When he actually said on the anniversary, and guess what? It is on the anniversary of her death too. John
It
Bonet's
is.
death exactly on the anniversary.
Well, with John, you could sit there and from the very first interview that he and Patsy did, and you could see an emotionless dad sitting there, just like there is not on one side. There's nothing sad about the interviews, but nothing sad about the murder of his daughter, John Bonet. There's nothing sad about it. At least Patsy showed some type of emotional duress. But John, in all of the interviews that he has provided, has no sadness whatsoever about the murder of his daughter, John Bonet. And when you go and watch his interview discussing uh, the staged accident of his daughter, Beth, he still doesn't show any signs of emotional distress or anything, from her death, which is a homicide. And that is never brought up.
There's so much wrong with even that John Bonet case because of the fact that when there's a missing child and then they even find the body there, and then they're letting all these friends come in there and start cleaning up the house and wiping down the kitchen and tampering with basically anything in there is it's crime scene. You know what I'm saying? So, and then for him to literally, according to that one lady detective, he came in there and brought John Bonet's body upstairs. He had even moved the tape off of her mouth and all that. She already had rigor mortis. And so he tainted all the different evidence, just like how they did on Levi Frady's bike by the mother and the daughter wiping Levi Frady's bicycle down, right?
Right. Well, one of the problems in the John Benet Ramsey murder case is you only see part of the Ramsey home. I have checked this out from other documentaries that you only see part of the home. The home was this huge place with an addition with like a 3-story addition, like a miniature hotel. 3-floor levels of these extra bedrooms. It wasn't this little old 3-bedroom or even 4-bedroom house. I don't know how many bedrooms that place has, but it's this huge house. You could use it as a miniature hotel.
Hey, can you answer Eric's question he wrote down in a question comment?
Well, they were indicted by the grand jury, and Alex Hunter, the district attorney, and I believe this to be with threats toward his life, decided not to press forward in prosecuting the case. So they were indicted for having part to do with John Benet's murder. It just the prosecution never moved forward.
Yeah, they said there's no reason to believe or reasonable proof that they actually had a hand in the murder, and yet the evidence is slapping everybody in the face right there.
Well, yeah,
I
the
mean,
indictment that the indictment itself proves that they had part to do with their daughter's murder or allowed it to happen.
yeah.
Makes me feel
Plus,
better. Guess I'm
what
prepared
they're
to
failing to
start
tell, what
getting
people's
guns.
failing to, one
So
thing
the
that
media
people's
don't
failing
nobody
to
knows I got
remember
guns.
too.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
hey, Charles,
you
one
know,
thing that one thing that they're failing to remember, people wouldn't, because it's been so long ago story. But Patsy actually I left my door unlocked because we had open house. Anybody could have been coming in and out. Okay, if they went to a party area and they left their doors open because they had an open house, excuse me?
yeah, they had a
Why
party.
would he even need the window open? Why would they even use a window? Plus the fact that there's no way that anybody got in that window because the spider web was undisturbed. If somebody went through there, the spider web would have been torn apart.
Well, what Patsy forgot to mention was they had 28 gas in the house that night.
Of course, she's going to forget to mention that.
Yeah. I mean, the place was wrecked when the police arrived that morning.
Yeah, and then
Um,
why was it only, that one detective at first? That's another cover up that the police used for the fact that they said they had these officers over there at sea, yada, 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 yada. Yet that one lady says, I was the only one there. I kept asking for backup, and they would not send anybody with backup to come over here and help me with this. And John Ramsey went over there to the couch, got one of them Afghan like things and threw over JonBenet, which of course that's going to put these other fibers on JonBenet as well. And plus, since then, they've also found the change of clothes that she had been in prior, or that actually had blood on her PJs. It's
uh,
like, why is all this other information not being let out to the people? How her underwear was not really her underwear that they dressed her back in. How they bathed her after the SA type of stuff. How John Ramsey said no, she wasn't sexually abused. How her doctor had even said no, she was sexually abused. And yet, it had males. It still had remnants of a male's. So yeah, that shows she was.
well, yeah, and they could, the DNA could be group DNA, which it probably is group DNA. There was more than one party involved. We know that Eric Rudolph was there. We know that Joey Davis, the anonymous caller to the Centennial Park attack, was there. We know
And
that
we
Hunter
know,
Biden was also there.
and we also know that they loved filming these kind of things when they do this atrocities to the kids. So somebody was probably right there with a camera too, and so that's probably on the dark web somewhere hiding.
Well, supposedly that video was floating up around Detroit because I don't want to mention any names, but one of my sources up there that is very familiar with John Ramsey and the Norfolk Island pedophile ring, with Frank Sheldon, um, Christopher Bush, Adam Starchild, and all these other players of the Norfolk Island pedophile ring. If you want to solve the John Benet Ramsey murder, you have to look at all the criminal activities of John Bennett Ramsey, starting with the Alphabet murders and how he partnered up with Frank Floyd in the abduction of 12-year-old Carmen Cologne.
Yeah, that's one the one that he was trying to Floyd was trying to kidnap that girl, and then he thought that when John Ramsey pulled up, then he thought that Frank Floyd thought that John Ramsey was about to try to save the girl, and John Ramsey was actually. How did you find out about this? Did John Ramsey later tell you about this, or how did you find out how this transpired?
All right. Before my 18th birthday in 1983, my brother Fred and his best friend Roger Nance were working at Leighton Graphics in Marietta. John had designed the microchip computer hardware for the United States government and Lockheed Martin back in 1982. So he had volunteered his services to train them data entry into the microchip um, computer hardware. Well, the United States government decided they were going to shut down the micro production in the United States in 1984. So they got with both companies, Polaroid and Kodak, and advised them that they were going to convert over to microfilm technology and had the two companies to compete about who could put out the best quality film for data entry into from microchip into the microfilm computer hardware.
Right.
So the guy that goes by Dale Montegraph, he was working at Kodak at the time. He used to work the Kodak booth there in Marietta and Smyrna, Georgia.
Y'all
Back
can
in
look it up and on Google and look up the Georgia's top um, influential people, and you'll see that I think Monograph listed it as like that, but we don't really fully know his full name either.
well, we know where he hangs out at.
But another reason why John probably never got arrested also because this is a big ring. They wash each other's back. They hide the evidence. And if you don't mind saying, do you think it was Levi's daddy that actually shot him, or do you think it was someone else?
I'm trying to. I forgot who it was who shot him, but I believe that it was my brother Fred who wound up with the murder weapon. So I'm going to say that it was my brother Fred because really I believe that he's the type that would have an audacity to do that to a boy that would uh, say something derogatory to him during his torture. Like, well, okay, you want to get smart with me, kid? I'll be the one to kill you. I mean, that's the kind of brother I had.
Right.
Complete 100% lunatic.
Okay, another thing is with all this stuff that's going on today with the Cobb County, Fulton County, and all this over there. I know that you tried different times to try to get the justice system over there. You tried to file different kind of paperwork and stuff to make these people pay for their crimes, right?
Yes, and I'm
And,
doing it again. I'm not going to give up whatsoever. And Mr. Kissy is doing his part as well.
and also one of the big names happens to be Fannie Willis, right? Tell us what Fannie Willis, how she plays a part in this.
Well, again, back in 2005, I had to go down to Fulton County for a meeting over Operation Long Whine. That was the human trafficking operation that I helped the GBI and FBI set up in 2005, which resulted in over 600 arrests and 300 arrests in that operation, including Antonio Ramirez Cardenas and Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
Um, when I had there was a 25-year run given to the terrorists because they had a 263-pound hydrogen bomb over at Cook Ridge there in Murphy, North Carolina, that was set to detonate Um, um, believe it was 36 hours from 7 p.m. to 28th of January 1998. So, in order to get that bomb disarmed and surrendered to the ATF, I had to come up one of the craziest deals with this bunch over there at Cook Ridge. I mean, crazy.
And what state is Cook Ridge actually in?
Ma'am,
Cook Ridge is actually in Georgia or North Carolina? I
that's
get
Murphy, North Carolina, just across the Georgia state
okay.
line from Young Harris, Georgia.
Okay, we're just trying to keep the locations.
Yeah, the Cook family grew up with Zell Miller and his family. They were like a close knit families together. The Cooks of Murphy Building Supply and Zell Miller, and of course his central banking wife Shirley Carver's families. Because Shirley was the president of the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. So now we're going to be getting into BlackRock, Vanguard, Victoria's Secret, Home Depot, of course, members of the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department in Murphy, North Carolina, and of course, law enforcement in Cobb County, Georgia, and the Cobb Judicial Circuit, and of course, the high members of the Georgia State Bar, like the Bentley brothers, the Bentley Law Group in Marietta, Alice Summer,
Right,
and of course, Ed Bentley Jr., the CEO of Bentley Enterprises, who makes the silencers for the U.S. military.
right.
These are all the same group that is tied into that pedophile network over there in Boulder County, Colorado, and on out into Oakland, California, and places out. It's a nationwide pedophile network, is what it is.
You'd be surprised how many homes that John Ramsey actually had. And I think at one time, was he not living in Tennessee for a little while with, what is that girl's,
With
the
Beth
with
Holloway, I
Beth
think them.
Holloway, yeah, with
Mhm.
her, yeah.
Well, in
But this was
1990,
after the daddy had and her had, I guess the daddy died or they divorced or whatever. I'm not sure.
mhm. Well, he had a house in Marietta. Then, after him and Lucy divorced in 1978 or 79, he wound up purchasing a home in Sandy Springs or close to Buckhead, the community there in Atlanta, where him and Patsy had a place there. They had a place there on Lake Chattooga in Hiawassee, Georgia, in 1996, even though they didn't live in it. I think it was Fleet White and his family that used that house in the summer of '96, and they stayed at Big Ray Duncan's house there on Lake Chattooga. Now, Big Ray Duncan was the founder of Duncan Oil. It's listed that his company was located there in Boulder, Colorado, but his brother Sam lives in Murphy, North Carolina, and Sam pretty much runs Duncan Oil.
So basically, a lot of these people that you're mentioning here had initially came from around the gridiron.
Yes, yes. Eric Rudolph, he worked for, like I said, he worked for Zell Miller. He had also helped remodel Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter's home in Plains, Georgia.
Wow.
He also did work for David Ralston, who later became the Speaker of the Georgia General Assembly. Um, I think he also did work for Johnny Isaacson. He used to be a congressman and senator out of Cobb County, Georgia.
Can, can we get to this question again? Where you had tried to file some paperwork and all this, and you wanted to even ask Fannie Willis to get this in a motion or something like that. What kind of answer did you get from Fannie Willis?
Actually, the case is in deadlock. The Roger Nance, I had released a lot of my information on Facebook, and Roger Nance retained Casey Libby as his attorney to file this frivolous tort against me for libel for posting this stuff online, claiming that none of it happened. I was making this up because I was disgruntled that Nance wound up purchasing my mother's home without my
He stole the
consent.
house. He didn't purchase it. He stole it.
He stole it. Yeah, he had to have my signature to get it, and he got it without my signature.
Yeah, that's forgery.
Well, it wasn't forgery. It's just real estate financial transaction fraud and fiduciary violation on my sister Karen's part.
Okay, I'm just saying if somebody signed your name and you didn't do it, that's forgery.
No, she somehow not been able to figure out how she did it through her attorney Morgan Robertson there in Marietta. Because all of her properties that ever was sold out of the estate required my signature. Then all of a sudden, the house gets sold without my signature.
That's very off.
It is, and well, Nance had help out of his buddies over there in Cobb Judicial Circuit. Um, and this is where I guess I need to go back in to how I met John Ramsey in 1983 to where everybody can get a full um, description on how I know John Ramsey.
Right.
How I personally know, well, I would say personally know it, but personally I've met him numerous times because we have always been arch enemies pretty much from the moment we met because I do not like pedophiles and I just totally detest a child murderer, especially a serial child murderer at that. But the companies that John had partnered with in the development of the microfilm computer hardware was General Electric, Motorola, Home Depot, and Bentley Enterprises. And of course, Bentley Law Group had their part to play in it as well. But Monty jumped ship from Kodak over to Polaroid when he found out that Polaroid had the higher quality film than Kodak. So he jumped ship from Kodak over to Polaroid. So they were all able to get together and get the new contract with Lockheed Martin. And that's who landed the contract with all these local county governments in just about every state in the United States. When you go to the courthouse and you want to pull up these old court records, it is all on microfilm. So that's where John really got his break, where he made his fortune, was first from the microchip computer hardware, then from the microfilm computer hardware. And of course, the CEO of what is today LA Fitness, he also had a role and part in that as well. Because that originally started out as the Knotless Fitness Center.
Wow.
So we're talking a lot of the big wigs of what they call the deep state. When you call the deep state, is the gridiron, which is the name that replaced the Knights of the Golden Circle that existed during and after the Civil War that even Jesse James was a member of.
Jesse James was a part of that?
Of the Knights of the Golden Circle, yes, ma'am.
Well, I know there in Nakalula Falls in Gadsden, Alabama, in
Mm-hmm.
Etowah County, they have a little park that you can ride a little train around on, and they got one of Jesse James' cabins out there. When you ride around on that small little train, and you'll see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jesse James did not die the way that we were told that he died. Jesse James, whenever he died under the name Henry Ford, a banker there in Texas. I forgot the name of Texas it is. But he was not shot in the back by Charlie Ford,
Oh,
like we were told. And I think we're going to, when we start going into a lot of these old gunslingers and stuff like that, like, I'm trying to think of their names. Old Robert Redford and Paul Newman played in that Western that time about those famous bank robbers. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing with those guys. Those guys didn't die down there in a shootout with the with the military like we're told. I mean, they didn't go out with a bang like that. Though, you know, they got into banking as well with the money they robbed. And you know, back in the Knights of the Golden Circle, their slavery was, you know, the black slaves. Well, today the gridirons slaves are the children. It's human trafficking, and that's where they make their fortune. That's where they've always wanted to come in and abolish this government that we have and set up their new world order that would still be based upon slave labor. And that's just pretty much what we have gotten, you know, sold on with hook and sinker. Because when we look at Home Depot and BlackRock, Victoria's Secret, Coca-Cola, Ted Turner, you know, the founder of TBS and CNN. You know, we're talking the gridiron, and we're talking the Mossad, because Arthur Blank, Bernie Marcus, Ken Lagone, Ron Brill, all of these guys were in the 6-Day War in 1967 for Israel. And that's how they got their free ticket over here to the United States to set up shop over here, was because of President Lyndon B. Johnson. So they wound up partnering up with the Bentleys and Marietta, of course, with Jeffrey Epstein as well, and John Ramsey. And their pedophile network has been growing and continuing ever since. Just you got to figure just about they have at least one Bentley farm. It might not be its name, but at least some type of ranch, whether it's cattle or horse ranch, in just about every state that they operate in, whether it's Georgia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Texas, Louisiana. They have these ranches all over the United States to hold their victims and sex traffic them and sacrifice them. Because you could call the homicide of John Benet Ramsey and Levi Frady anything you want to call them, but those children were sacrificed. And it's the same in West Memphis, Arkansas, with Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. Okay. When you look at the cases of the Alphabet, the Oakland County child murders, some of the Atlanta child murders, some of those children were bathed, okay, before they were murdered. And that was to remove any forensic evidence. Now, they say that Jill Robinson was not sexually assaulted, but I know better.
yeah, just like they tried to say, as John Ramsey tried to say, John Bonet wasn't either, but she was. We know better.
Yeah, we know better. This came out up there after my confrontation of Eric Rudolph back in 1999 when they lost their death wager. They wanted to bet their lives against mine that they could prove that the FBI sent me up there into North Carolina to shut them down, and they lost dramatically. So when that came out, I wound up actually finally having a meeting with Pat Murphy and Mara Rudolph, Eric's mother and sister, about
Oh,
this.
that really made her mad when she found out what Eric Rudolph had said, right?
Oh my
Question he
gosh.
had
I
asked,
still
you
feel
know.
sorry. I really feel sorry for Pat Murphy and Eric's sister Mara, because they were really nice ladies, just good down to earth, trying to find their best walk in life and build their relationship with God was really, really Pat Murphy's intention of moving up there to Western North Carolina. Tom Flanagan, um, our friend who convinced them to come up there. Tom was just good, down to earth people. I know he had some brushes with the law over some firearms issues, but Tom is the type of guy who would give you the shirt off his back. And I'll be glad to stand up and defend their honor and integrity any day of the week. Just like I'll be glad to stand up and defend Burke Ramsey. Burke had nothing to do with neither of his sister's homicides, especially John Benet's. But
Yeah,
when we start getting into John Andrew, now that's a horse
that's a
of a
different
different color.
story. Yeah,
Yes, yes, ma'am. John
he,
Andrew.
did they say that that suitcase that was down in the basement was really John Andrews? So he was basically there, but people didn't know that he was basically there too.
Yeah, well, when you got the Ramsey family trying to cover for him, saying he was in Atlanta, he was actually at the airport trying to get on the plane to come to Atlanta. Okay. Um, the mag light that Roger Dance claims to hitting John Benet in the head with, okay, was actually like my stun gun. They had both been stolen from me by my brother Fred.
Yeah, so that they could try to frame you into it.
Well, yeah, they tried to set me up for the fake attack of Mike Cook's first wife, Rhonda, on September 11th, 1996.
And that's funny that they said that you the whereabouts you that you were whatever, and then your vehicle was really in a total different state than where they say you were.
Well, we can actually thank the FBI for that, because I can't sit here and say I didn't have any assistance out of the FBI. To be lying if I did. I did have some assistance out of the FBI because once I got to Murphy and they postponed the attack from the 25th to the 27th, that saved a lot of lives. That also saved the life of Kenny Rogers,
Yeah, they
because
were
they were
gonna
going to
try to
kill.
bomb that while he was doing a concert. Am I right? Then they're going to put it
Yeah,
up
that
close to
the
where he was
original
at.
the original date to attack the Centennial Park was on the 25th of July, not the 27th. They had eight backpacks of explosives constructed for that attack. And once I got to Murphy on the 23rd, they immediately postponed it to my daughter's birthday on the 27th.
Wow, how convenient, huh?
Oh, yes. So on September 11th, 1996, Mark Thigpen, who was drug task force commander of the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department, was over in Ranger, North Carolina, running tag numbers. And of course, my vehicle was still registered in Evergreen, Alabama at the time, my pickup truck that I had before I got my little Plymouth Voyager minivan that resembled a lot of Jim Vickers, Dodge Caravans, similar in color and everything. Is how they mistook Jim's vehicle as my vehicle there in Cumming. So that's why they went ahead with the abduction of Levi, because they mistook his van as my van. Um, um, I say that, I had let the feds use the magnetic signs off of my truck So they came up with another truck and tag number like mine and drove it through Ranger that afternoon or morning for Thigpen to run the tag number. But I was in College Park, Georgia, cleaning upholstery um, for easy rental that entire day. So I had plenty of alibis to cover where I was at. Well, while I was next door having lunch at this Jamaican restaurant, I mean, you never forget stuff like this.
Right.
Yeah, like I still remember what I had for lunch. It was hot wings, French fries, and sweet tea with lemon. But right when I'm up there paying for my meal at the cash register, well, Rhonda Cook winds up stabbed in the legs. Well, supposedly I came riding up there to their house on a motorcycle, not in my pickup truck, but on a motorcycle.
Yeah, only that guy that's in that restaurant, the Waffle King, only he says only he could drive it. He does not like nobody to drive his.
Yeah, nobody could ride Dennis's Harley but Dennis. Nobody was going to get on Dennis's motorcycle but him. And he was still married at the time to Frances, John, and Robert Cook's niece, Mary. They were still married. They have two grown children together and actually grandchildren together, which, of course, Dennis is deceased now from COVID-19. Like Sam Duncan Jr., he's deceased from COVID-19.
Sorry, no love lost.
But I supposedly rode up there to their house and knocked on her screen door and asked her if I could use the telephone. And she refused to allow me to use her telephone. So I supposedly forced my way through the door with a knife and attacked her. And
how many miles away from there were you in actuality?
Around 130, 140 miles.
Man, you had some long arms to be able to do that, man.
Right.
Well, I guess my middle name should be Houdini.
You're into teletransporting, aren't you? Did you jump through the phone line?
I didn't think about that one. Maybe I'll try that next time. But anyway.
You got to be like the Star Trek,
Yeah, beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligence.
Beam me up, Scotty. Yeah, you teleport, right?
No, it's too far stretched. Just like they try to discredit Charlie, it's now going to become more apparent to them because I'm speaking out on his behalf in regards to what transpired with he and I in that was where in Dawson County, wasn't it?
Well, we had met in Dawson County there at the Ingalls, but they had lured us over and just across to the Forsyth County line, just inside Forsyth County.
Yeah.
It's
amazing how Fred and Roger showed up exactly where we were meeting at. So they had to have followed you.
Well, they had the tracking devices on my vehicle.
And I was stunned when they showed up. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? Oh, hey, we're just kind of riding around and happened to notice y'all sitting over here. We noticed Charlie, and of course, what are you guys doing? Oh, well, we're going to go see about having us a birthday celebration drink. Oh, well, we know a great place to go drink. Why don't you just follow us? Which led to us being lured to an area that used to be the Ingalls shopping center. It wasn't there at the time yet. It was just a field and just some staging trailers there. Some of those container trailers set down where they were getting ready to start construction of that place. And we pulled in there and didn't look like no place to drink to me. I was kind of stunned about where these drinks was coming from. And then some other people pulled in behind us. And lo and behold, Jeff Cook jumps out of the truck. Roger and Fred get out. And there's some other gentlemen that get out that I didn't know who these people were. I knew Fred I didn't really recognize Roger, didn't know of Roger until later on, but ended up with guns put to our head, and they was going to go ahead and execute us
Wow.
because Charlie didn't show up for that appointment to deliver that little canister back so he could be framed for Levi's murder.
Yeah,
Probably even before, not even just Frank, they probably would have killed us, but they said we did y'all a favor, we caught him doing this,
well, I tried to tell him to turn his car around.
I didn't believe him. I thought he was just pulling my leg. Little did I know he was absolutely serious. But thank God that he was begging for my life, and Fred had lied to them and told them I was an FBI agent. And I'm like, I'm not no FBI agent. I'm a family member of law enforcement, but I'm not an FBI agent. I said, I'm a truck driver. I said, I don't have nothing to do with law enforcement. And they didn't believe me, so they wanted to look at my driver's license. And I showed that to them. And so they realized that I was telling the truth.
Yeah,
And
they realized that they were going to be killing y'all senselessly, and then they ended up finding out that these were pedophiles, right?
yeah.
Well, yeah, they showed up in they showed up in Francis Cook's. Jeff Cook was driving Francis Cook's 1980 F-250 pickup truck. The other showed up in his 1996 Ford custom van, blue and white. They had two custom vans, blue and white, that they would use in their terrorist attacks. One was a 1996 Dodge custom passenger van, and the other one was a 1996 Ford custom passenger van. Both of them were identical in color, blue and white.
Right.
When they were going to hit when they were going to attack Cumberland Mall at Six Flags Over Georgia on July the 4th, 1996, which they did get past Blue Ridge, Georgia, because they were stopped by the Blue Ridge Police Department and Georgia State Patrol there at the intersection of 5 and 515. Main intersection there in Blue Ridge, where today the Home Depot and Walmart's located at, wasn't located back then, but the McDonald's, the Hardee's, and the Waffle House and theater were located at, and Jimmy White's herb shop there on the corner. That is what stopped the attacks and me getting killed in one of those two attacks, because they were going to kill me that evening. That's the reason why they told me all this stuff that they had been involved in on up until that point, because they just were so confident they were going to kill me in one of those two attacks. And so they didn't even make it past Blue Ridge, Georgia that afternoon. But when they showed up over there in Dawsonville, they was, when they showed up in County after we were lured,
You're back in Georgia again, right?
yeah, when we were lured over there just inside the Forsyth County line, the van they showed up was in the Ford. Well, in the Ford was Jeff Cook's younger brother, Fred Cook. He was driving. Mike Cook was riding behind him in the front passenger seat, behind, driver's seat. Matt McRae was sitting next to him when he exited. Eric Rudolph was in riding shotgun, in the front passenger seat. And inside was Merle McRae, Matt's dad, the owner of the Radio Shacks in Andrews and Murphy, North Carolina. John Ussolini, Tim and David Duncan, Ray Duncan's two boys. They were in the back, which I didn't know who was in there who all was in there at the time, except I saw Fred Cook driving. I saw Mike Cook when Matt McRae and Eric Rudolph exited. But it was Jeff Cook who had his 38 up to the back of Eric's head here, and it was Eric Rudolph who had his 45 up to the back of my head, and we're about to execute us. And I just told him, I said, hey, if y'all are going to execute me, just go ahead and get it over with, but don't execute my buddy. And they were like, oh, well, what's this? You standing up for a, for a cop, for a federal agent? I said, he's not a cop. And they were like, he's not a cop. How do we know that? I said, those two over there. I pointed at my brother Fred and Roger Nance. I said, they know him. And they looked over at Fred and Roger, and they're like, well, Fred and Roger, y'all know him. I call him Danny by his middle name. And they're like, well, yeah, we know him a little bit. Do y'all know if he's a federal agent or not? No, we don't know. So they didn't know they didn't know what he did for a living at that point. But he was a commercial truck driver. And on March 11th, 1997, there was 13 attacks that they attempted over in Doraville in Chamblee, Georgia. 3 of those attacks consisted of truck bombs. The first truck bomb that was supposed to detonate was at the IRS building there on Beaufort Highway. The next truck bomb that was supposed to detonate was driven by Craig Manier, which was the bridge at the MARTA rail station there in Doraville, Georgia. The third truck bomb that they were going to use to attack was the Doraville General Motors assembly plant. And that was the first attempted truck bombing of that assembly plant. The second one, if I remember correctly, is around May the 22nd, 1997. They went over there and tried to attack it. And of course, resulted in immediate shutdown of production of the Oldsmobile minivan and Cutlass, and the layoff of 3,200 employees. And of course, we had to issue gag orders on all 3,200 employees, in addition to the employees of the Lakewood General Motors assembly plant in Atlanta, which was only attempted to be hit one time. And this is what made it look suspicious on General Motors. There was the breach of security at the Lakewood plant was 2 sections of the chain link fence were missing from the side access road to that plant. So they could pull off the excess road like they did and pull into that area. But of course, city of Atlanta was sitting there waiting on them. Well, Danny, being a commercial truck driver, he drove tankers. And wasn't it Mansfield Oil you were driving for? Mm-hmm. Who had the jet fuel for Delta Airlines when it was stored there on Beaufort Highway. They had just got through filling up his tanker with jet fuel whenever the gates closed, and they were told that they all had to go into the building. He was told was from computer malfunction. How did you find out it was from a terrorist attacks that morning?
From other truck drivers later on during the day.
Yeah, you got to hear from the other truck drivers
on the CB radio.
Oh, wow.
That they had tried to hit. They thought was just 3 targets. No, it was 13 targets, because you had the fuel tanks at Peachtree DeKalb Airport that Fred and Roger were going to hit. With backpack detonators. Marigas propane distribution facility there where the Chamblee public safety building is located today. The fuel farm, the Citgo fueling facility, the gas stations along the Beaufort Highway corridor. So it was a total of 13 terrorist attacks that they tried to attempt that late morning, early afternoon. I was held hostage for 2 hours and 45 minutes in the Rent-A-Center. They're just less than a mile south of Interstate 285. That's why people can go to Doraville, Georgia, and Norcross, and places like that, and people still talk about this. Because the whole place was like this huge powder keg of fueling facilities, storage facilities from the refineries. And if they had hit that, they would have blown the city of Doraville off the map. Is what it boils down to, if they had succeeded. So here we are in this secluded area there in Forsyth County, and I'm sitting there pleading for his safety, and they come to find out he's a commercial truck driver. And so Matt McRae tells him, well, Danny, it's like this. Didn't know if you knew it or not, but we're the ones that are responsible for the bombing of that federal building out there at Oklahoma City. And also the attacks there in Doraville, Georgia. And right then, when they said that, he knew what they were talking about. And that's when he explained to them where he was at. And he pulled a good one on them. He was like, wow, guys, you mean y'all are behind that? Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Wow, that is just cool. He all of a sudden is acting like he's totally supportive of what they're doing. You know, his dad was an executive in the steel, was it American Steel?
Special Steel Corporation.
Yeah. And he lost his job when they shipped the steel industry overseas. And that was his excuse of acting like he was totally favoring what they were doing. And he was looking at me because they were telling him that they knew that I was the one out there stopping them from doing all these terrorist attacks.
And I'm trying to talk Charlie out. I'm like, Charlie, these guys.
So they're like, okay. So, Mac steps over to the van. He says something to the guys inside and asks them what they should do. And they said, man, just go ahead and let them live. But leave Jeff behind in case Charles does something crazy, like, he's going to continue trying to stop us. And then if he does, go ahead and take him out. So they left Jeff Cook behind and the rest of them left. So we sat there, a good hour and a half? Yeah. Good hour and a half talking with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now you can't remember the exact other child murder cases that they said they involved in, but they did state that they was involved in other child murder cases, correct?
They did.
So they admitted to him that they was involved in more than just the homicide of Levi Frady.
Wow.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Well, the thing for me is what makes it so difficult to remember is once you have a gun put to your head, it turns your whole world upside down.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that you knew that life existed of, everything changes.
Like the time when my daddy pointed that shotgun at me, when I was 11-year-old, and he shot at me and stuff. Yeah, I thought for sure I was dead. I was more was survival type of thing than I was, focus on how beautiful the day was and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do your best to try to forget it and block it out of your mind because you hope that they never come back. It's like a bad omen if they do. You're got. For them to drop into your life so easily and your life be threatened and be just seconds away from being brain matter splat everywhere. It makes you have a totally different perspective on life. It most definitely does.
What I think is amazing is how many times that these perpetrators come up to you Charles, and probably you too, Eric Kiss, and told y'all about the people and laugh about these kids that they murdered and they raped and everything. And I guess with the intention of killing y'all right after telling y'all.
Well, no, they told us after they decided not to kill us
Yeah.
because they thought he was on board and
Yeah.
all of that, and it was okay. They could tell him.
Which I'm going to be honest, I'm against abortion. Okay, I always have been,
Uh-huh.
unless, of course, the the mother's life is in danger. You know, then you try to spare the mother's life at all expenses, all you can. But other than that, yeah, I'm against abortion. So they were talking about blowing up abortion clinics. I'm like, yeah, those doctors are murderers. On that point, I stood with them. I agree. Uh, you
But it,
know,
oh
for
yeah,
innocent child to have to die a premature death wrongfully, as a doctor that performs an abortion to me is a murderer. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, they couldn't find out it wasn't really about killing these people for stopping them from killing babies. It basically was to kill everybody.
Well, Planned Parenthood has been nothing, and of course, the Abortion Federation. They were just nothing but you know benefits for human traffickers and predators. Who wanted the easy way out of their getting their victims pregnant.
Yeah.
Human
See,
trafficking.
see the things about what I was saying about a few minutes ago, about John Ramsey telling you and confessing that he killed that one girl up in Oakland, whatever, and then killing, and then you you being right there when he threatened to kill um,
Beth.
what's her Beth and her boyfriend, and then him threatening to do what he was going to do to you and everything, and threatened to Beth about killing John Monet on the anniversary of when I can't think of what that girl's name, that
Jill Robinson.
Jill Robinson, and her death, and it was the anniversary. Y'all look it up on there. Why do you think he would go and do this and say this kind of stuff unless he really thought that he was going to kill you right afterwards?
Well, I
Charles,
think,
how about you, Charles?
yeah,
Um, he knew that Charles wasn't on board. He knew that Charles would try to survive and try to help the people.
yeah. Well, he was laughing about that when I met him back in 1983 there by Leighton Graphics and Tip Top Poetry. He was out there, and I couldn't believe my ears and my eyes from what I was sitting there watching my brother, um, his best friend Roger Nance, and the two technicians. They're from Leighton Graphics laughing, and I mean they actually busted out laughing when he stated that he shot Jill Robinson in the face. They thought that that was hilarious.
Sickos.
And I didn't find one bit of it funny. Now the only thing that I found funny was when he sat there and Roger asked him about that 11-year-old blonde that had.
That one makes me laugh too. Oh man, I love it. I love it. I love
Yeah,
it. That's hilarious.
and I was holding my laughter inside about that, because I didn't want to get, carried away laughing like they were because they might have doggone killed me right there on the spot. But I had to ask him. I said, Mr. Ramsey, how old are you? And of course, he lied about his age, said he was 36 when he was actually 40. And he goes, I'm 36. And I'm like, so you're 36 years old and you got this 11-year-old blonde girl out there in secluded location. And and she wound up kicking your butt because you failed to remove
That
her tennis Snickers. He goes, well, that's not actually what happened. I said, well, she escaped, right? He goes, yeah. I said, now, were you trying to rape her? He goes, oh, yeah. I had just gotten her shorts down and was in the process of pulling her panties down when she got her footing.
and
I
got
said,
him
okay.
right into manhood, didn't she?
Well, I was like, well, shoot. What makes you think removing her tennis shoes would have done any good? She could probably kick your butt without her tennis shoes. Oh, no, no, no. She wouldn't be able to do anything without the tennis shoes. So what you're saying is because you failed to remove your to the tennis shoes of your 11-year-old victim, you got your butt whooped. I was like, shoot, man, I'm not even 18 years old yet. That means I could whoop your butt from here all the way over here to Tip Top Poetry with one hand tied behind my back.
And how old were you at this time? Got
I wasn't even 8. That was like 3 days. That was 3 days from my 18th birthday. So I was still 17 years old. And
yeah, it was at
17
the
years
time
old, do
was
you think I would have beat up John Ramsey?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I'd have beat up John Ramsey at 17.
I've seen you in action.
was that the made up was the made up Bill Ramsey there at the time too?
Well, I was Frank Floyd going by Bill Ramsey.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Was the made up Bill Ramsey there at the time?
Yeah, he was going by Bill Ramsey. I was Frank Floyd.
Right, exactly.
Now, Mike McLaughlin.
That's Franklin. For people want to do a search on him, he was Franklin Delano Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't arrive until maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes after that with Mike McLaughlin, who is now
the judge magistrate.
Mike McLaughlin. And I had witnessed McLaughlin in a process of a homicide back in 1980 when I was on the back of the school bus when I was in the 8th grade at Mabry Middle. We lived on Ebenezer Road there in Marietta, just down the road from Sheriff Bill Hudson's house, and his sister lived next door to him.
Right.
And here I was riding in the very back seat of the school bus, looking out the back when I saw that 1970 Buick Centurion coming around the curve on the oncoming traffic side by side. Green primer gray, 1969 or 68 or 70 Chevelle. And it ran off of the road into the brick mailbox of Sheriff Bill Hudson's sister. So the bus would make a right onto Knight Road and circle around to Blackwell Road and back up to Ebenezer to my driveway, which was only about 250 feet past Knight Road on the left. So I got my bus driver to let me off right there on the corner. And I went up to the corner house and rang the doorbell. And the lady, she came to the door, and I told her to call the operator and to get the paramedics and police out there. There was an accident down the road, and asked her if I could leave my school books there on her front porch when I run down there to assist.
And we got to let the people know.
But that's when I first became a witness against Mike McLaughlin, was in 1980.
Hey, Charles.
Uh-huh.
This is when we got to let people know that you did not know who Judge McLaughlin was at that first time. You found out later.
We can't hear you.
Okay. I said, you got to let the people know that at this present time that you're talking about, you saw that, but you did not know who this guy was in that vehicle, and you found out later who he was.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. So I never seen him before. I'd never seen that vehicle before. And when I went running down there, he was working on getting the driver's door open. And I thought it was to render aid to his, who I thought was his buddy at the time. I thought they were just racing.
Huh.
So right when I get there, he gets the car door open. And I told him, I said, man, you might not want to move your buddy. Doesn't look like he needs to be moved until the, paramedics get here. You know, he goes over and opens up the passenger door of his automobile. This guy is just in complete pain. The engine was was pushed back into the dash. That's how hard he hit that brick mailbox. He just totally knocked the brick mailbox about, oh, good grief, a good 6 to 8 foot from where it was, originally at. So he was in pain. His arms were kind of shrugged up at his chest, and he was all shaking when he pulled him out and dragged him over and threw him in the passenger seat. And he shut the door and he looked at me and he goes, "Kid, if you're smart, you're not going to say anything to the police or you'll wind up dead." Well, shoot, I'm sitting right there in front of the sheriff's house. Sheriff of Cobb County. How could I not tell the police what I saw? They were already on the way. And it was just like a minute or two after he took off. He had a blue Tennessee license plate on, and I had no way to write down the tag number. Couldn't recognize it tag when I saw it. I just knew it was an out-of-state plate. So I told, I gave
That's
my.
right. That's right, because he was working and living in Tennessee at the time. Judge McLaughlin was not a judge in Georgia at the time.
No, he was still living in Knoxville, where he's from. Now, he also matches up, which I know that he was involved in the I-70 killings because they got a composite sketch of him up to date. That is him. He was actually involved in the 1981 homicide of 28-year-old Mary Carter of Cincinnati, Ohio, who Frank Floyd had abducted with her 2 daughters at this convenience store by this bus stop and had taken them back to his house where Frank Sheldon and Doug McRae he were waiting at when Floyd arrived, and John Ramsey pulled in a short time after Floyd arrived there. And it's actually, I've heard this twice out of Doug McRae and out of Judge McLaughlin, that he is the one who actually murdered Miss Carter right there in front of her 2 daughters. And her 2 daughters are still alive. So hopefully they will be able to identify him. I have contacted Cincinnati Police Department and not gotten any response out of them yet about that homicide. But if Frank Floyd had not already been apprehended, you could have taken to the bank he would have been out there at the time that John Bonet was murdered, because he was also involved in the automobile chase that killed Beth Ramsey and her boyfriend, Matt Darrington, there in January of 1992. But yeah, McLaughlin, he had just started his job with a magistrate court in pretrial services, or early pretrial release is what they called it back then. When he arrived with Floyd, and I got to see him for the second time. And that's when I found out who he was, his identity then. But Floyd was going by Bill Ramsey. So when I made my report to that fact to the police, there was no Bill Ramsey. There was not a such thing as a Bill Ramsey. Well, it was Frank Floyd. Because they did try to kill me that night. They chased me all around Bentley Farm and all around Blackjack Mountain that night, trying to hunt me down like an animal and kill me. But I managed to get away and got my dad to come and get me. But it was just before the attack on the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building. I was living in Evergreen, Alabama. My daughter had Actually, no, it was actually before that because I don't think my daughter was born yet. But my brother came down there numerous times trying to chase me down, and he couldn't catch me. He came down there again with Roger Nance and some other guys in a black van and tried to chase me down. They wanted to get rid of me then. And that was after what happened over there at Bentley Farm with Beth Ramsey and Matt Darrington. So one afternoon, early afternoon, I'm driving back down to the community of Paul, Alabama from Evergreen, Alabama, down Brooklyn Road. And just as I approached County Road 31, that Buick Centurion pulled out behind me and was on my bumper. I was in an 83 Grand Prix SJ white with T-tops. A little below 305. It didn't stand a chance against that big old 455 four barrel, and he had dual exhaust, if I remember correctly. He had that car set up. That was his murder car. So he personally took it upon himself to come down there and deal with me. There was two old UPS box trucks, one further down from Brooklyn Paul Road. I can't think of the name of the road where it was parked on. It's a dirt road. There's a oil well over there today. And the other one was at the intersection of it and Brooklyn Paul Road, waiting for me if I decided to go down through there. So I look at my rearview mirror, and there's that same Buick Centurion. Mike McLaughlin's driving it. He comes pulling up beside me with a 357, points it at me. I hit a brake, put it in reverse, and pulled a little Jim Rockford on him. Spun it back and spun it around. Well, he knew that stunt too, so I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew I didn't want to run up into town and possibly injure somebody. First thing that popped in my mind was Grady Rawls' brick mailbox there on Brooklyn Paul Road, because it's a very tricky road. I knew if I could make it down to Brooklyn Paul Road, I could get him to crash his car into that brick mailbox. So I spun my car back around again, and we both shot down Brooklyn Paul Road, or down Brooklyn Road to Brooklyn Paul Road. And I had practiced many times making that turn onto that road real fast. So in the event something like this were to happen, I would know how to make that turn without wiping out, because the gravel from the old logging trucks and stuff have built up right there in that turnoff. So if your tires hit it, you'd slide over into the ditch like he did do when he turned in behind me. And of course, he hit, a few little trees and crumpled up that fender. And he sure wasn't happy about that. But I had pedal to the metal in my Grand Prix. So by the time he got the car straightened out and back on the road, and right up on my bumper, was just before that drop off. And the funny thing about Grady and Willadine's place was their white picket fence would go straight. It didn't curve with the road when it curved to the left just past their driveway. So when you're up on the bumper of somebody's car, or even 2 car lengths behind them on that road, and you see that white picket fence going straight, you're going to think the road's going straight. But right when it jumps down and past that driveway, it curves to the left. So I hit straight in center for that brick mailbox. And at the last minute, I cut over. And that's how Judge McLaughlin totaled out his 1970 Buick Centurion, and luckily survived that crash.
Yeah, he almost, his head almost popped open like a watermelon, right?
Yeah, that's what he said in 2013 at the raid at my house there in Marietta. After they forced me that injection, we had a conversation. Of course, John Ramsey was there. Grady Moore, prosecutor with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office, he was there. Ed Bentley was there. Roger Nance was there. My brother was there, Fred. Um, Fred Bentley Jr. was there. Randall Bentley Sr. was there. Joe Pugh was there. My cousin Robert Veach was there. Ron Brill was the one who forced me the injection. And of course, Mark Payne, the guy knocked out in Papa Doe's there on Windy Hill Road back in 2005 or 2006, he was there.
Is John Pugh the one that we deem as, he called his nickname Butterbrain?
Butterbrain. Yeah, that's Joe Pugh. He's an investigator with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office. So now you can understand why someone like Alex Hunter out there in Boulder County would refuse to proceed forward in the prosecution of John and Patsy Ramsey.
Right.
Well, when you look at the reputation of the law enforcement there in Boulder County, they're just as bad, as not worse, than in Cobb County.
It's like the whole group of people go from there to there, back and forth from to Boulder to different places. Like when the Ramseys go to Michigan, they go to Michigan. It's like they go in together as a group, and then all these murders of these children happen, and it's like, okay, who's these murderers, right?
Right. In some cases, you'll have the parents involved. In some cases, the parents aren't involved. So it's kind of like trying to, you get to where you almost want to pull your hair out and trying to find out which case the parents were involved versus the case that the parents were not involved.
Well, I think what the dad give away with this Levi Frady case is, you got a missing kid. All of a sudden, you call 911 regardless. Like, where is my kid? My kid's missing. He didn't show up from school. You know what I'm saying? If that was the case, right?
Well,
you don't just wait till the next morning after getting up. And that's kind of weird, about the John Bonet thing, too, when they waited hours and hours before they actually supposedly called,
Well, it's like the guy that was in the shirt and tie and the white pickup truck or whatever color pickup truck that the newspaper article that you just read mentioned. He could have been pulled out there that morning and smoked him some dope or whatever before he went to work, and probably had nothing to do with the dumping of Levi Frady. They dumped his body in Dawson National Forest there in Dawson County. Okay, which is not the county where Levi was murdered at. He was murdered in Forsyth County over, if I remember correctly, not far from Marshall Talent's home.
Did you say that he was SA'd as well? I can't remember.
I don't know about the SA part, but he suffered the same fate as I think it was Stevie Branch did there in West Memphis, Arkansas, judicial mutilation.
Oh my goodness. He actually got cut down there?
That it's not in the official
man.
incident report, but the guy from the funeral home said that he had been. Now, you remember what I told you? The question was that Eric Rudolph asked me during our
yeah, I remember the question. I'll let y'all say it. Just let me put trigger warning up right quick. Hold on. I gotta put trigger warning up because this is really grotesque. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was called in on my oldest brother's birthday into the Radio Shack there in January of 1997 there in Murphy. And this is what we call the famous conversation. It was between Eric Rudolph, Doug McRae, and his nephew, Mac McRae.
Right.
Jeff Livingston, who was an employee for the Radio Shack, he overheard it, but he wasn't really in as much in the conversation himself. He was working the front, the counter in front of the store that morning. But they asked me what I thought about the cases of the boys out there in West Memphis, Arkansas, and I told them it was just terrible about what happened to those three boys from what I had gathered from the news. And of course, Doug, he was more kind of decent. He didn't chuckle about it, but Matt McRae and Eric Rudolph, they kind of chuckled about, well, we're the ones that are responsible for those three boys' homicides. And I was like, really? So they asked me what I knew about the case, and I just told them, I said, well, I heard there was it was a satanic ritual. And they're like, well, yeah, I guess you could call it that. And, that's, pretty much what the public has. And Eric looks at me and he goes, yeah, but Charles, have you ever sucked the blood out of a dead boy's penis?
Can y'all do me a favor right quick? Eric, can you do me a favor?
Uh-huh.
Somebody at Facebook on his post was asking me for the link, so I did send him a link, to here. He was asking, I don't know how long he's been waiting. But I just went and looked that somebody was asking for the link to come listen,
The link to what?
to this because he couldn't get to it.
Are you talking about his federal tort?
No, this live that we're doing right now. You had
Uh-huh.
posted at Facebook, and somebody was asking. Okay, so he's got the link now. Never mind, I got it, so don't worry
Okay.
about it.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe he'll be in here in a minute. But yeah, that was sickening for him to ask. Who did he ask this to? To
He
you?
asked that to me.
Oh
And
my goodness! Go ahead and ask that again because I interrupted right after you said that. I'm sorry. I just
yeah,
had that message.
he asked me if I'd ever sucked the blood out of a dead boy's penis. And that is the question that he lied to his mother about there in September of 1999 when I actually went over and sat down and had my meeting with his mother, Pat Murphy, and his sister, Mara Rudolph. My
So you
mom
mean
asked me,
Rudolph's mother remarried or something like that?
I don't think so. Their dad worked at the airport, if I remember, down there in Fort Lauderdale, and he died from cancer and a slow, painful death. And the yeah, there's another one of my buddies from high school that's joined in the conversation there.
Yeah,
Hey,
that
Daryl.
he's at Facebook. You can see that he wrote it. You see
Yeah,
the F? That means he's writing from Facebook. Okay.
yeah, well, that's one of my old buddies from back in the day, that Daryl Gravely there.
Hello, Daryl. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guy. Come on over.
I hope you can come on over to Facebook.
Yeah, yeah,
It don't matter. We got him on both things here at YouTube, so it's all right. He said it's okay because both of them, people know him by both names.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Daryl remembers me from high school.
Yeah, he's good people. But anyway,
I'm the one that's left out because I didn't go to that high school with y'all, so I'm the one
yeah.
that.
No, you're still a survivor of the Bentley Farm deal there. So a lot of
Yeah,
people in
true.
Marietta are that didn't already know are starting to find out about that place because they can't dispute the amount of fires that's happened in that one barn, the loft, every so many years.
And I don't see how a barn that was stone completely burnt down either. That don't make sense to me. Excuse me, I kid you not. A completely stone, how could a completely stone burn to the ground? Complete, honestly.
Well, they did, and it's funny how the
I just said
Marietta
it did. You know
Fire
what I'm saying?
Department. It's funny how fast the Marietta Fire Department could respond to those barn fires and salvage those barns. But in some cases, they couldn't all the time salvage the homes they were called out to.
And I think it's kind of weird, when you look at the kind of stuff. And Miss Summer was away from home both times, out of town both times, and it being cold part of the year. And she said none of her animals was in the barns, and it's like, do what?
Well,
Seriously?
just the newspaper articles in the Marietta Daily Journal. An 8-year-old child could sit there and decipher through that.
Exactly.
And then you drive over there to Barnes Mill Road, there where Bentley Lake Road turns off. Now they got Bentley Lake Road closed off to the public. And you got a church on down there at the dead end of that road that's fits in as well. So I guess they'll open it up Sunday mornings for church service. Then afterwards they close it back up.
That Daryl's a friend of mine. I accepted him as a friend. So, okay. Also, I want to wonder. I got a proposition for you guys that I want to end up doing a Zoom call pretty soon, and a bunch of us get in there and let's have a private conversation about this stuff.
Yeah, what I'm wanting to do is encourage a lot of people, since we're coming up on the second inauguration of President Trump, since this involves the same bunch that we're exposing that is tied to Larry Fink, BlackRock, the executives of Home Depot.
Fannie
That's
Willis, and even Fannie Willis. Remember, we got to remember her.
Well, yeah. I mean, anybody. I don't care what their skin color is. At least I won't feel like. At least the as I should say, at least the Zionists won't feel discriminated at, as long as we got a few black folk to throw in their jail with them. Um, at least I won't be totally hated for going after you know Jewish and white supremacists. So.
But did you not try to get her to do a report, and she denied to do anything to try to help out, on making sure that these
Well,
people,
back in
predators, monsters, were had to face the repercussions of their actions?
Well, they've always refused to go after this bunch for the Atlanta child murders.
Uh huh.
They know who was really responsible for the Atlanta child murders, and they're hell bent leaving the complete blame on Wayne Williams. Now, I'm not going to say that Wayne was completely innocent. He could have been a procurer of these children, for all I know. I have spoken with Wayne Williams on the phone one time, with assistance of one of the Free Wayne Williams uh, members. Actually did get me on a phone conversation with Wayne. And according to Wayne, he was in the junior CIA because his dad was a colonel in the U.S. Army back when he was a child. And he got out and saw some things that he didn't like. And that's the reason why they framed him. But I know for a fact that he was already in custody there around June 19th of 1982 when I had to go down there to the Chattahoochee River that night and demand the safe return of my brother. And Roger Nance, when I discovered that my cousin Robert Veach and Ed Bentley Jr. were down there as well. And once I found my cousin Robert was down there, I knew then that my brother was going to be safely returned. But I managed to bluff my way back out of there.
Thank God for that bluffing.
And that's how I became an eyewitness to the Atlanta child murders. Because
Yeah,
I
they
was,
said that you say the Williams guy basically, was convicted falsely when it really wasn't the 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 floors to the carpets to the daddy's house. It was the carpets to somebody's car, and yet they prosecuted him based on the carpets that said it's daddy's house, and it was separate carpets.
well,
Separate shutters.
he's been convicted of the murders of 2 adults, and it's still kind of beyond me how somebody that is small as him would be able to lift these guys that are a lot larger than him and throw them, you know, over a bridge and down into a river, the Chattahoochee River,
Right.
as little as he is, because I've talked to some guys that have served time with him, and he's a little guy. He's not this, he what might be what 5'6". I mean, he's a little guy. Now, don't get me wrong. I've seen some little guys very, very strong in my life, but in order to pull up there and do that fast and pull off is the way that they describe is, has drawn a lot of questions in a lot of people's mind. Was that actually bodies he threw down in the Chattahoochee, or was that something else he threw? But I know
Was
for a fact that Ted Turner was involved. I know for a fact that John Ramsey was involved, Frank Floyd, and
They said that they did the right at the water's edge or something like that. Did they not
yeah,
rape
they had
rape
one.
a lot of them little
They had
guys
one
and
over
stuff
there.
like that?
They had one over there laying down on the ground close to the shoreline. This is where the Canoe Restaurant is located today. There at the north bank of the Chattahoochee, there at West Paces Ferry Pass, I call it. They're the bridge of West Paces Ferry Road, because you got that old bridge that runs alongside of the new bridge or newer bridge. Um, about 10 years ago, they went in and made that a walking trail and riding trail and refurbished that bridge for that purpose. But the sacrificial site of the Atlanta child murders is right there where the Canoe Restaurant is located at today.
Wait. I see. I want to make sure that everybody knows when I said the black boys, I'm not saying nothing racist, but I want everybody to know I don't care if they're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, or whatever. A child does not deserve this.
No, 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 not the way these children were murdered. I mean, a child doesn't deserve to be murdered, number one, because they're just beginning their life.
Right.
You know,
And they
it's like
can't defend themselves. The kids are at the mercy of adults for protection.
yeah. And you sit there and you read about how these abortions are conducted, but then you turn around and you look at how these children that they murdered have been murdered. It is you can't determine which one's worse to die, whether it's by abortion or by the tortures and the mutilation that they do to these children.
Yes.
And people like us, we cannot relate to something like that, like these lunatics can.
Yeah. And, I hate the fact that my daddy generally mutilated me too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And
And a lot of people, you would not believe how many guys that I have met, after getting to know them, I had to come clean about being injured there, whatever. You got to be careful about doing certain things because the magnitude, how much I was, having, maimed, right?
well, I
So,
I, I
so
believe
you would not believe the magnitude of guys that said, I wish you'd just put on your pants and show me. And I'm like, do what?
yeah,
I'm curious as to see. Look, so what? You're gonna be curious, and you're gonna have to remain curious.
yeah, the that's some people don't realize what they're saying until after they say it. But
This is for my eyes
I
only,
I
and I'm
honestly
gonna be
believe
with
these I honestly believe that these children were mutilated while they were still alive.
It's
And
I'm lucky to have survived it after he cut me. Using that knife. Like I said, I was just laying on the couch, and my daddy went in there with a knife and spread my legs, and he cut that part off of me. He literally put it in his mouth and ate it. And next thing I remember him closing my legs back. I don't remember being in pain as bad because I guess I zoned out a lot of pain. I had learned early. The next thing I know, I'm in the bathtub of water just sitting there, afraid to move, knowing that I'm going to drown, how deep the water was up to my chest, to my nips of a little girl. If
Hmm.
I moved a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, about lost my balance. I would have easily went under. So I had to just sit there. And but the water was so bloody, it wasn't. I'm never going to get over something like that.
Hmm.
I'm never going to get over something like that. By the grace of God, I survived all that.
Well, that's like Pat Murphy. When I went over there to meet with her, she had her shotgun there in her living room. And I believe that her intentions, she was going to shoot one or two people that evening. She was either going to shoot me for wrongfully having her son on the run from the law, or she was going to wind up shooting her son if she found out exactly everything that I had told Tom Flanagan about him when we had our ride up to Bryson City that one day. I told Tom about it. I used to drink coffee and with Tom Flanagan in the Waffle King, so I knew Tom fairly well before we rode up to Bryson City um, that day and had our conversation around the 20th of September of 1999, the day after they lost their, Eric and that bunch lost their death wager. So they wanted to hear out of me, and I couldn't blame Tom at all for having doubt about what I told him about that question because he everybody up in that area thought that Eric was on the run because he thought he was doing God's will and going out there and attacking these abortion providers. What they did not know was all these other terrorist attacks that he had been involved in, and all these child murder cases that he involved in. They didn't even know. They knew he taught water skiing lessons, but they didn't know that he also taught John Bonet how to water ski in the summer of 1996 there in Lake Chattooga. And it's to my understanding, he also went out there to Colorado and gave her some skiing lessons out there in Colorado.
And I noticed too. Thank you so much, Dara. I appreciate that. But I use whatever happened to me. I use it to try to help other people. That's why I talk about it. I got my
Mm-hmm.
third book out there. It's most people know that because the fact is getting the story out there.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that even Jimmy Carter went up to Colorado around that area and skied.
Well, actually, Jimmy and Rosen, to my understanding, was in Boulder the night that John Bonet was murdered, and so was Zell Miller and Shirley Carver. There was a lot of people in powerful positions. To my understanding, even Nicole Kidman was out there.
Oh wow!
Now how valid that is, I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's what I heard through the grapevine. But in order to solve
I
the
kind of
John
think
Benet
it's funny.
Ramsey, in
I,
order to
Go
solve the
ahead.
John Benet Ramsey case, you have to look at all the other child murder cases that John Ramsey was involved in and is responsible for, which starts with my cousin Robert Veach, Franklin Delano Floyd, and the Alphabet murders.
And also, you got to still remember the fact that he actually told you, I mean, told Beth right in front of you that he was going to say those words exactly what he had told Beth that he was going to do to John Bonet.
Well, one of Beth's biggest fears was John Benet being put in these little beauty pageants because Patsy had approached her about being in beauty pageants. And, Beth, she was a baby doll. I mean, both Beth and John Bonet are, uh,
Hi, Eric.
hey, Eric, how you doing? You know, almost a spitting image of each other. They were both brunettes, you know. And John sat there and told her that he was going to dye her hair as a blonde, dress her up as a beauty queen, to prance around these beauty pageants. And before he murdered her, he was going to pass her around like that's what his words. Now remember now, a madam in a brothel.
Whoa, he actually used those words, a madam in a brothel?
A madam in a brothel. I was trying to remember how he put it, but now it
Wow.
just rung the bell. A madam in a brothel.
Wow.
And he was going to do this on the 20th anniversary of Jill Robinson's homicide.
And if people look that up, they'll see that John Bonet died right around the anniversary of Jill Robinson's murder as well. So there you go, people.
Mm-hmm.
Pay close attention to all the evidence, although they pretty much covered it up. That's why these high society, these people with money, and he actually had a government job, right?
Well, pretty much. Access Graphics, it was like any other graphics company.
I'm going to show that picture thing again.
Yeah. You know, we do, graphics and design. In addition to, stuff that I don't know exactly what all it entailed. I never really worked in graphics and design like my brother Fred did. But
Thank you, Eric.
John was volunteering his services there at Leighton Graphics and training those technicians data entry from the microchip into the microfilm industry there in November of 1983 when I initially met him. And to him, he loves telling the stories about the children he murders because he finds it humorous.
And he thinks it's funny that he gets to keep getting away with it. And remember,
Well, that's
he
a
even
part of it. That's
did
why
he not?
it's so funny to him is how he's able to get away with it.
Yeah, and did he not say that he was Satan himself?
Well, he sat there and when he told Beth how he was going to do that was to where he would have complete control over her soul for eternity. That he was going to get her back, and he was going to have John Bonet murdered. And
Look at the
so
screen right there.
he believes he's Satan himself, and there's no way in the world I could prove otherwise. I can't call him delusional for thinking that from the type of individual that he is, because he is so deceptive. Now, Daryl, that was actually over there where Arrow Exterminator's located today. There on Woolcool Road, there by the Big Chicken. There by the Tip Top Poultry. There at the corner of Gresham Road and Woolcool Road.
It's kind of heartbreaking. We tell people to call law enforcement if they are touched in any which way, but you would dare not call them in some cities and towns and states, because they're a part of the ones that keep it going. They're the part of ones you have to worry about.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of scared. Like, who do we really trust? Who can we really call that's going to really help our kids out? And we've seen so much with CPS taking the kids of people that a kid may be just a little sick or something like that. Then all of a sudden they'll take the kids away from the parents, even if they're not being abused. They're not doing it legally. They're just going ahead and doing it. And look at all these kids that's been missing since the with the border stuff, there's been over 500 something thousand kids missing. Where are our kids? 500,000 of them. Where
Mhm.
are they?
Yeah. Yeah, I see where Daryl's saying over by the post office, because that's where we actually stepped over and was having our conversation at, was there at the post office, because of the surveillance cameras that Mr. Layton had there at Layton Graphics. They didn't want it on video. So we stepped out across the road there on Wilco there, on
So it
that
would be a
grassy
video.
area there by the post office is where we had our conversations when he sat there. And we even walked up there toward the front of the post office there, right at the corner, because I was waiting on Mike McLaughlin and Frank Floyd to arrive when we're having these conversations. So yeah, Daryl was there at the post office. Um, I'm trying to remember what else I was going to say. But yeah, the I had another encounter with John Ramsey after that.
Let me grab my clip.
I'm thinking in 2004, 2005 over there at the Waffle House, which is Unit 479. That building is owned by Ed Bentley Jr. and is leased to the Waffle House Corporation. I don't know what kind of deal that they have with Pike Nursery, but all of that area back there that used to have these other warehouses that went down the road is now all used for Pike Nursery today. I don't know if he leases the area to Pike or if he actually sold part of it to Pike Nursery, but it's pretty much an operation for Pike Nursery today.
Oh, wow.
So it's like Jim Jordan and James Comer when they announced a couple years ago, once they got into Congress, they was going to open the Hunter Biden investigations into Joe and the Hunter Biden, is because Hunter, he was head deep in all of this.
Was he not supposed to go and say who was on the list and stuff like that? And so was a big guy.
Yeah, when I'm um, after I showed up and stopped the um, June 3rd, it was June 3rd, 1997. I've got this confirmation from some other people that was at that baseball game um, last year. Um, they went over there and was going to hit the Ball Ground Little League baseball game there, Ball Ground, Georgia. And I showed up over there, messed up that attack. And that's in
Thank
Cherokee
you.
County, Georgia. Well, after that, they brought um, Jeff and Mike Cook brought Hunter Biden over there to Murphy, North Carolina, to have a discussion with me because his dad was a U.S. Senator. And so we met in this area over there past the old Highway 64 and Highway 64. They dropped us off and pulled further down to where we'd have our little private conversation. And I brought up John Bonet, and Hunter told me he was out there in Boulder when they murdered John Bonet, him and Eric Rudolph and all the rest of the bunch.
Hunter Biden actually told you that?
Yes, he did. And I asked him, I said, do you think she really deserved to die? And he was like, no, I don't think any of them deserve to die. I said, well, when you were that age, do you think you would have deserved to die when you were at that age? And he goes, no, but that's about, I was about 8 years old when I got dragged into this mess myself.
Wow.
So
It
we
makes
sat
you feel
there.
for him being put through that by Joe Biden, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Shirley Carver, Zell Miller's wife, she's, president of the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta. So, Hillary Clinton's nothing but the reflection of Shirley Carver. All these politicians that they talk about, I don't care if it's Nancy Pelosi or whoever they are, they're all the political reflections of Shirley Carver. Because Shirley, like Hillary Clinton likes to pass herself off as this, real friendly, you know, church going Christian woman. But behind the scenes, she is one of the most evil women you can meet, They would all like to go over there in the summers there and probably still do. She's still alive. Go over there and just surround her because she is,
Hey, look what Eric
one of the
Skinner.
main.
See what Eric Skinner just asked.
Yeah, I'm talking about Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. That is exactly who I'm talking about there, Mr. Skinner. Um, so I can't remember if it was just before or after the Juneteenth 1997 attempted truck bombing of the Home Depot corporate headquarters that I was called over to a meeting with Jim Biden. And of course, I had a confrontation from this one boy that told me he was going to beat me to death. And of course, when I got finished with him, he was paralyzed or partially paralyzed for over 2 years. And before I met with Jim Biden, and even Jim agreed that this stuff with the human trafficking and all this needed to come to the end itself. He at least got him to agree with me too. But they just did not know how I was going to be able to get the cooks to surrender that hydrogen bomb over there at Cook Ridge. They didn't see it happening. And it wouldn't have happened if Mary Hegwood at the time, I've got her last name now, she's remarried.
So,
That
so
was
when you
John.
actually talked to Biden, Biden's son, was that in Georgia or Colorado or North
Yeah,
Carolina?
there was a lot of people out there. If I remember correctly, Jimmy Carter, Rosalynn Carter, Zell Miller, they did not engage in the homicide of John Bonet, but they were there.
Right.
There was a lot of people who were there that was not involved in her homicide. Because see, this is how these people work with their blackmail operations. When you look at Jeff Epstein, how and the way they set these people up, when they first become members of Congress or they become a successful business owner, he was their number one blackmail artist,
Wow.
because this is how they run. This is how they run Congress. This is how they run the Senate, is by blackmail. It's hard to get a congressman or a senator to rule in favor of their.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you for voting for Trump. Good grief, we didn't need a term with Kamala Harris or creepy Uncle Joe back in there in another term. Because Trump, he's finding out. I think he's finding out the hard way that the same people that he's supporting out there with the Zionist state of Israel, the same people that's tried to have him assassinated, and the same bunch that we're speaking about here. At least that's what I hope. I hope he realizes that. We're about to find out one way or the other. Even if it kills me to find out, we're going to find out.
Right.
But Larry Fink, he was very well involved in this, in the Atlanta child murders and all these terrorist attacks, and now they're wanting to start up again in another range of attacks in order to complete their New World Order agenda.
Right.
And like I said before, back when the Knights of the Golden Circle, the slaves were the black slaves. Today, it's the children, and that's how they fund their operations, their enterprises, and building up their money to try to induce us into another race and civil war and revolution, to where they could pull off their objective for the New World Order. They've already destroyed the Georgia Guidestones and expecting the city of Elberton to fork the bill to build a new set so they can set in for their new agenda for their New World Order. And that is what this is really all about. When we look at whether it's Milton Frady, John Ramsey, Jeffrey Epstein, Ted Turner, Craig Manier, Arthur Blank, and all this bunch, these are the people who we call the deep state. People will say, well, it's the Jews. Well, no, you can't sit there and say it's the Jews. It's because the Zionists have stolen the Jewish identity. These are the Khazarians, the Khazars that we know them as. They are from Turkey. They are not any lineage of the tribes of Israel whatsoever, even though they identify themselves as Jews. But like Jesus said, they are those who profess to be Jews, but not Jews, but are of the synagogue of Satan.
Yeah.
So you go in to what we call the Talmud, and you read into it, you find out that it's nothing more but the doctrine of warmongers and pedophiles. And that's what Jesus was really teaching against and gave his life for on the cross, was the activities of the oral law that the Pharisees of his time were engaged in, which was pedophilia, and in some cases child sacrifice. The number one factor that has always led to the fall of the tribes of Israel and throughout biblical history was their willingness to go over and engage in the traditions of the Babylonians and the Egyptians, even after being brought out of captivity out of Egypt. So this is not something that just started in the 20th century. This is something that's been going on close to 8,000 years now.
Wow.
That's why when you read there in the 18th chapter of the book of Matthew, the disciples, they were arguing over who the greatest in the kingdom of heaven was. Well, he set the record straight. And he brought a child into the midst of them, and he told them, hey, you think you're going to be the first, you're going to be the last, buddy.
Yeah, the greatest is you got to be like a child.
Yeah, you got to humble yourself as this little child is pretty much what it boils down to.
So all these people that's harming children, and that's one of some of the more chosen ones, you know.
Well, a child has an open mind. They were young and they were open mind to the truth. They were open to instruction. They were completely innocent. And that's why he said it goes, if your if your left eye offends you,
You're not
it's better to pluck out your eye and enter into kingdom of heaven maimed without that eye than the entire body, you know, complete to be cast into Gehenna. In other words, if you look upon the stuff like, child sacrifice, you know, child sexual assault, and you look into this type of stuff, um, and you allow it to engage to where you can see it, you know, that in itself is a sin. And, if your left hand, if it's same thing, if your hand engages in that kind of conduct, um, teaching a child ungodliness or engaging in ungodliness with that child, it's better off to cut off that hand than your body to be, entire body to be cast into Gehenna. And same with your foot. If your foot walks into the steps of the direction of that being done to a child, it is better off to cut off that foot. That is pretty much what I gathered out of the message. Because, they would sacrifice children and they would take these eggs and they would boil them and dip them into the blood of children and go out and hide them to celebrate the birth of Tammuz or Horus or Saturn, whatever the name is. They're all the same, whether it's, you know, Egyptian, Babylonian, or Roman. And in order to celebrate his birth, they would go out and sacrifice a child and dip the eggs in the blood of the child and hide them for the other children to hunt as the significance of the hunt, because Tammuz was a hunter. That's how he died, was out on a hunt when he got gored to death by a wild boar. He was out with a hunting party hunting for a wild boar when he got gored to death by one.
right.
And of course, and there in the book of Jeremiah, when you go in chapter 10, Jeremiah pretty much spoke out against the adorning of the evergreen, the decorations of the evergreen, that, the evergreen that grew out of the dead stump was the significance of the birth of Tammuz from the death of
Yeah.
Nimrod. The evergreen grew out of the dead stump, and the evergreen representing the tree of life in ancient Babylon. So that there's a lot of satanic symbolism when we look into the traditions. It's the way that we revere the birth of Jesus, because we still celebrate his birth during the winter solstice on the same dates as the birth of these pagan deities.
Did you see what Daryl had to say?
Yeah, he's like a lot of people. He's from Marietta, and a lot of people in Marietta know very, very seriously about what happened with the Atlanta child murders, more than what the rest of the public and the rest of the country are familiar with. Because when you grow up in Cobb County and you see all these other cases, you know, they always come up in discussions because we know a lot of the same people from Marietta. We attended Sprayberry High School together,
Yeah.
and we
I
used
guess we
to,
better. I guess we better put a close to it soon. We've been over 3 hours, so.
yeah. But yeah, Daryl, thanks for joining
But
in the conversation
I just
there.
want you to touch base with, before we go, because that question I was asking you about that you went forward trying to get Fannie Willis and some of these others to do something about it, and all that. And then basically they turned their backs, right?
Well, she sat there and told me there in 2005 when we launched Operation Longline,
Uh huh.
um, which also stemmed Operation Child Safe, which resulted in the rescues of 215 children as young as 5 years of age by 2009. When I told her that um, when it got, I really wanted to do it in 2019, but she said it because Paul Howard was the district attorney of Fulton County at that time, and she was just an assistant um, DA, that they was not going to prosecute the others responsible for the Centennial Park attack.
Ain't that crazy? You would think that they would want to get rid of the people that caused the stir about the bombings and everything.
Well, that's what you would think, but when you look at that picture back in 1977 and 1978 of Rosalind Carter and John Wayne Gacy, you know, even Rex Harriman was out there in Boulder, Colorado when John Bonet was murdered.
Yeah.
Um, you play the song by Red Ryder, The Lunatic Fringe, and the song, The Lunatic Fringe, is very much about the gridiron, the deep state. That's what that song is about. The fringe is the golden fringe around the flag of the United States of Admiralty jurisdiction. And that's all I'm going to say about that. You could do your research on your own at that. I'm going to commit treason and go in front of a firing squad, being appointed governor of the state of North Carolina, on releasing information that I've been told not to get too much an intel of.
Right. And
But
Eric says, thank you, Charles. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Darlene. You're welcome.
yeah, thank you everybody for joining in on this conversation, and Godspeed to y'all. And we're going to go ahead and close it out. It's been 3 hours, 7 minutes, and 58 seconds since we've been in this session here.
Time flies.
Yeah, it always flies when you're covering ground, and
Covered some good ground today.
yeah, and but that's how Eric Kiss got dragged into this mess, and I sure didn't volunteer for it myself.
I didn't volunteer for it either, man.
Yeah, we're all volunteers.
Yeah,
We're involuntarily volunteered.
What?
We're involuntarily volunteered.
Yeah, but at least we can be strong and not be like a lot of people who this happened to and say, just sweep it under the rug, do nothing about it. And they don't realize that them doing nothing about it is making the problem grow even more so.
Yeah. Well, it is. And but you know what? Awareness is awareness. If you share this information, with a family member, with a friend, just say, I'd like to get your opinion on this and tell me what you think, and let them approach it with an open mind.
Right.
They set the stuff up to where when a prosecutor did have to prosecute it, they'd be sitting there trying to explain it to a jury and will look like they need to be in the nut ward because the whole dialogue in itself is so crazy and absurd. But thank God that we were able to stop that reign of terrorism in the 1990s um, to where the American people would have the opportunity to have the internet, to have a computer in their home, because there was only about, on the average, 3 out of 10 households that even had a computer back in the 1990s, and had access to the internet. Now today, just about everybody has access to the internet. Normally, whenever I release some information, you give it about 3 to 6 weeks later, somebody else is out there releasing it. So there is light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
because the facts are out there. The places are there where people can go and check it out and do their research, whether it's Blue Ridge, Georgia, whether it's Ball Ground, Georgia, Doraville, Gainesville. They try to hit the federal courthouse. So over there in Gainesville, Georgia, February the 3rd, 1997, that was actually their second truck bomb attack was on the U.S. courthouse in Gainesville, Georgia. And of course, they got cussed out by the federal magistrate for stopping that attack. So we know dang good and well that this is all deep state operations. And John Ramsey, Milton Frady, Terry Hobbs, and we can look out there in Delphi, Indiana. They're in the homicides of Abby Williams and Libby German. This was very much another one of these homicides that involved way more than just one individual by the name of Ricky. Trying to remember his name now, but it's impossible for him to act alone in those homicides if he actually participated on Ricky Allen. So there is more that meets the eyes when you start looking into these high-profile child murder cases,
Oh, yeah.
because there's always going to be that one name that is going to pop up until the day he dies, and that's going to be John Bennett Ramsey.
Wow. Yeah. It's pretty scary when you look at that, ain't it?
It is, and um, and like I said, it's still tied to the Georgia State Bar, members of the Georgia State Bar, the Bentleys, Alice Summer, a lot of these people that are on the bench in Cobb and Fulton County. The brave police officers, City of Atlanta, they helped me stop a lot of attacks there in the city of Atlanta. Valentine's Day, 1997, they tried to attack the Fox Theater with a truck bomb. And those were some brave officers of the Atlanta Police Department who helped me stop that attack. And they need to stop using the Atlanta PD as a stepping tool for the LGBTQ stuff, because these are the very people that is pushing this, or the very people that is responsible for the human trafficking and the terrorism in the United States and abroad.
Wow.
But everybody have a good day. We're going to go ahead and sign on out of here, and look forward to another episode. We'll figure out what other issues are. We'll see what transpires here this week as we approach the second inauguration of President Donald Trump.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good one.
You too.
Y'all have a great one, y'all.